Lucifer means Lightbringer presents the mythical astronomy of ice and fire. The sacred order of green zombies. Part 5. The Great Old Ones. Featuring Silas and ideas of ice and fire.
Hello everyone. We got a little spooky intro music for you because it's going to be an especially spooky podcast today. We're delving into some of the darkest corners of the Song of Ice and Fire source mythology, and that, of course, is the works of H.P. Lovecraft, with a little occult European folklore sprinkled in. So it's going to be a dark and twisted road that we will walk today. And with me to walk this road, as you heard, are two of my dear friends. One is a cohabiter of the great state of California. My good friend Silas Toms from the God of Terror blog. Say hello, Silas Toms.
Hey, all. Thanks for coming.
I heard a rumor it was your birthday yesterday, my friend.
Yep, and we celebrated hard, so I may be a little slow today.
We'll give you a few minutes for the coffee to kick in, and then we're gonna expect,
rapid fire naming of old ones, right?
That's right. Well, yeah, I guess we won't speak of specific ages, but we celebrate with you, and thanks for sharing your post-birthday glow with us. We appreciate that.
It's my pleasure.
And also with me, I'm sorry, what was that?
I said thanks for having me.
There you go. You got to speak up or else I'll just talk over you.
All right, good night.
Okay, and then joining me also is, of course, who you heard on the intro, Quinn from Ideas of Ice and Fire.
I want to know who that annoying overdramatic voice was on the intro.
That was you.
Oh,
you sent me a normal take, and I was like, no, that's not going to do. Give me something way more dramatic. And so that's what we got.
Yeah. Well, it's great to be back on here. I'm ready to get into this stuff. It could go a million different directions. Well, the beginning part, but not your part because it's scripted. But
well, I do have a script today, guys, just to give you an idea of the format. I do have a script. I've got a few places where I'm going to stop the script and open it for discussion with these guys so we can get a little more background on some of the Lovecraftian ideas. But before we even start, I thought it would be appropriate to actually have a little bit of open discussion about the intersection of Lovecraft and A Song of Ice and Fire. There's nobody better to tell you about that than these two guys here. And in particular, Silas, I want to start with you. You do have a blog called The Gods of Terror. And the basic premise of it is that Martin is sort of drawing on the general sense of the idea of hidden gods and sleeping gods when he's creating his own mythos. And it's a really fascinating sort of behind the scenes idea, but it definitely fits the vibe of what's going on. So give us a few minutes on just what that's all about.
Well, thanks again. Yeah. So when I first read the books after the second season, what was really fun for me was just realizing how deep the world goes, no matter how far you dig. And unlike most fantasy stories where you just kind of see the ideas that create the universe sort of fall apart because it's just too hard to create such a deep world. So I got really excited by that, and I kept seeing on Reddit, especially mentions of Lovecraft, which I thought was like needlework or something at first. But I finally read up and realized that, he was this amazing author who created a lot of the, horror basis or ideas that really influence modern horror movies and also fantasy. And I read up on how George was a big time, Lovecraft and Conan fan when he was a teenager and a young boy. Conan being a creation of one of his best friends. So the whole world being so related and sort of funneled into just the underlying tapestry of Game of Thrones and Ice and Fire that I had to read up more on it. So one of the really fun things was looking at, comparing the gods that obviously are a big part of Lovecraft, and seeing how at least some explicitly and some less so, they've been adapted into the gods of the world of Ice and Fire. So that got me really excited, and I started blogging about it, and I've gone in many different directions with it, and I've read a lot of fun and a lot of pulpy 60s camp kind of fantasy, like Thongor. If you've ever read Thongor, written by Lynn Carter, who was George's first editor, or one of his first editors, and a good friend of his, and a committed Lovecraft devotee, who also wrote a lot of later Conan stories. So I really got into just trying to spot, much like you with the mythological astronomy, trying to spot where these ideas are used. Sometimes, like I said, way in the background, and sometimes like right up front, like the Bloodstone Emperor, which we'll get into more, I'm sure.
Sorry, I'm trying to get Sandry in on the call here behind the scenes. I got a little technical issues going on. Quinn, you want to respond to the basic thoughts outlined here?
Yeah, I like a lot of what he said. I dabble with the Lovecraft stuff. Basically, it came out of reading A Song of Ice and Fire, and then I got this big Lovecraft book that had a bunch of his stories in it. I think it was maybe all of them. And just noticing just like certain like names or places being similar, and then just diving deeper and seeing how all these things like the deep ones are pulled directly from Lovecraft and a lot of different things. And I tend when I've made a few videos pointing some of these things out, but I tend to be a little bit vaguer. I tend to not like point to like an exact figure and be like, this is definitely this person. I say like, oh, this could maybe relate to something to do with this god, and some of its characteristics could be applied to this certain character or this place. Like for instance, like the idea of like an abandoned place, like Shai is like this kind of, most of a Shai has to be kind of abandoned, right? Because there's not that many people there and it's super large. So I kind of think how it's like next to the mountains, and I think about At the Mountains of Madness, where these guys, they go over there and they discover this kind of abandoned city, and then these things wake up and they unleash this like terror, and he's like, don't go back there. But yeah, I kind of think about that. So that kind of stuff just gets me excited, because I know that one of the things that Lovecraft is really good at is like hinting at like these hidden terrors, like these awful things that people aren't really supposed to know about or see. Like for instance, in that story At the Mountains of Madness, when they're escaping, one of the guys looks back and he goes like insane, because that's like a thing that Lovecraft does. Like you look at this horrible thing and you go insane. But yeah, because like mankind, you're not supposed to know about it. It's so terrible that you're not supposed to know about it. And I just like how George R. Martin incorporates those kind of ideas into the story. And recently, because you mentioned like pop culture and like modern horror movies, the movie Bird Box did a Lovecraft thing, and they even literally have a scene where he's like drawing pictures of like Lovecraftian monsters in that movie. I don't know if you've seen that movie. It was like they see this thing and then they kill themselves. It was kind of dumb, but yeah, it was definitely like kind of playing off that Lovecraft thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and so that's Aziz has talked about this in I think it's actually a patron only episode that he did on the prologue, but the prologue where Garrett sort of goes insane after seeing the others, and oh, hello, Sanri. Yes, hello. So I'm in the shame cube, everyone. This was my fault.
The cube of shame.
Yeah, I need to go get a box and put it over my head or something. It's thank you for forgiving me and joining the stream, Sanri. What can I say?
Oh, I'm muted. Sorry.
I thought you were just coming on and instantly giving me the silent treatment.
No, I have drawn you goat boys. And
holy goodness, you've already gotten started. Look at this. What's going on here?
I thought I missed it. I was like, oh shit, because Silas started talking, and no. Okay.
I honestly just got too baked, and there was a lot going on, and I didn't realize you were in on the thread, and now I'm in the shame cube. What can I say? But look at this. You've got okay, so you've got a fishy goat man. What is this now?
That's Oscar the Sea Goat.
Oscar the Sea Goat.
He was requested. What do you do when you see an old god? Watch out for the apocalypse. Apparently, I really like drawing cute Thulu.
Cthulhu is almost more terrifying because it's like he has no idea that he's about to crush you with his monstrous hug strength. He's just like, "Come here, let me love you," and you're like, "No, Cthulhu."
That's a man of Ling, with safe for work furry pants, as all centaurs have. And yeah, these are just warm ups. They always start with a butt. So
Why is there a butt? Why?
They're always. It's 2 moons.
Okay. That's true. And I see what did George get one of the gauntlets?
Yeah.
Did he get a
You got a super chat from Marvin Martin.
He's got a Valerian steel.
Oh wow.
You've seen these, right?
Yeah.
Right, yeah. They are pretty cool though. You can wow it. There has been a couple super chats. Melanie Lot 7 sent in one earlier. And did you say
Marvin Martin?
Was that like way earlier?
Yeah. Way
okay.
early.
Well, I can't see it, but thank you, Marvin Martin. Thank you, Mr. Marvin Martin. I very much appreciate that. And by the way, we're getting ready to start fundraising for the cons. We're going to try to go to 2 cons this year. So I'm going to be bugging you about that, but not today. Today, we're here to talk about Lovecraft and Cthulhu, and not Cthulhu, but actually we're going to be talking more about a story called Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that's the one where there's I found a lot of A Song of Ice and Fire correlations. But getting back to what I was saying a minute ago, the prologue of A Game of Thrones is probably the first place you see a Lovecraftian idea, and it's not even in the prologue, but more so in the next chapter after Ned executes Garrett, because Garrett is basically driven insane by his confrontation with the others and possibly by seeing Waymar rise from the dead, and his mortal mind just reels in the face of this incomprehensible evil and power. And that is like, one of the major themes, if not the theme of Lovecraft works, is it not, Silas?
Yeah. Especially the basic idea is that there's these beings that aren't really gods. They're like just beings that are so vast and incomprehensible and old that you can't really comprehend it if you're one of the tiny little folk who live on planets like we do. And they travel between the planets, somehow always coming to Earth, which is like, kind of funny. But, I guess it's an important spot. And if you happen to just look in the wrong place or look the wrong way, when one of these gods pops out, your mind is just blown. It's so incomprehensibly vast and old and freakish that your puny human brain just can't handle it. And that's like the most continuing theme that he employs, that the cosmos are so vast and scary that if we stop to even think about it, we get scared, and if we catch a glimpse, we would go insane.
So what's interesting about that to me is that it's kind of like the flip side of the idea of shamanic madness, which you see in Odin and Norse mythology, where the idea is like the shaman, in order to communicate with the other side, has to be sort of half mad. And frequently the breakthrough for a young shaman comes when he is sick or has a near-death experience. This kind of thing can open the third eye. And Martin plays with that idea where people are placed, in darkness or under stress. And this triggers, spiritual activity and opening of the third eye. So that's kind of interesting. So Lovecraft is basically talking about like what happens when you try to walk that road of half madness and you fall over the edge, when you don't make it. That's like what Lovecraft is almost fascinated with. And if one thinks of Euron, like Euron is attempting to comprehend these things, and you can tell he's at least half mad, but he's right now holding it together. He doesn't seem to be about to implode. So one wonders where Martin is going with that. What do you guys think? Where is Euron going? Is he going to like drive himself insane, or someone have to kill him?
You want to go, Quinn?
Well, you can go ahead if you want. I've talked about Euron so much.
Yeah, well, Euron figures deep into a lot of my essays, especially on Narlethotep, the crawling chaos. Some part of me wants to believe that he's been like, become an avatar of Narlethotep or Narlethotep or however you might pronounce it. Don't worry about pronouncing these things. Supposedly we'll never be able to pronounce it correctly.
Yeah.
And, Narlethotep is he's used by Stephen King by a lot of people as kind of like the guy who the god or whatever, who actually communicates with humans more than any others, the messenger of the god. And he comes down always to kind of not kill necessarily directly, but to help humanity kill itself, to help humanity kind of go insane. And so if there's a character like Euron, who's already pretty intense and pretty insane, and he might be the, being that pushes us into the long night somehow with whatever mechanism that's going to be revealed. Narlethotep is the kind of being that would help him along the way.
So Silas, I've got people asking where we can find your essays, and the easy way to do it is just search Gods of Terror. That will pull it right up. The link is also in the description of this video, and I will go ahead and just drop it back in once again. But all you have to do is search Gods of Terror, and it will come right up.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I've just, they may be a little long, some of them, but there's so much material there correlating back and forth between how George grew up reading it, how he learned to love it, that I can't help but just carry on.
Now, your Tumblr is your main page, right?
Yeah. And I know Tumblr has been a bad boy the last few months, but I don't want to transfer it over. I'm a lazy guy.
Well, I will say that WordPress sites tend to be easier to navigate when you're looking for old essays. That's my one frustration with Tumblr is when you look for old essays, it's kind of hard. But
yeah, the archives is the easiest way to do that, but it's still a pain. I agree.
All right. So can you guys? What we're going to get into today is the concept of the great old ones in particular. So, can you, Quinn, tell us about the great old ones, sort of as a classification, and what kinds of beings are they? What do they do?
Okay. Well, the great old ones refers to the quote unquote gods that ruled over the earth, way, way, way before mankind ever got there. And generally, in modern times, I guess they're imprisoned in another dimension, or asleep, or they're away, they're not present, but they do still have effect on, I guess, the people in the real world. I guess in the short story The Call of Cthulhu, for instance, at one point he's sending dreams out to people, and there's cults that worship them and stuff like that. So you can kind of communicate with them too. In the story The Dunwich Horror, actually, the great old one, God, which one is it? I forget. I think it's Yog-Sothoth, and he actually has physical children. They're these kind of half human, half monstrous things. So yeah, they're kind of like these super dimensional, super, I guess, intelligent, so far beyond your understanding, and that just merely seeing them will drive you crazy. And like you said, Stephen King does that. He did it in It a lot. He does it in The Dark Tower. George R. Martin might have done that with Patchface, and like you said, the character in the prologue. So yeah, that's what the great old ones are.
And they tend to communicate to people through psychic invasion and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, dreams. Like you mentioned, the Dream Quest of Kadath. That's one. Literally, Nyarlathotep shows up at the end of that one. And what's interesting about that one is it's not typical of a Lovecraft story, because the protagonist kind of gets away. He doesn't fall victim to the great old one, and they usually always have the upper hand. So that just shows you they're not actually gods in the traditional sense of divine gods. They're just beings that are beyond us, way, way beyond.
Well, we're gonna talk about the Isle of Ling, the Song of Ice and Fire, but of course, you guys probably remember that the old ones live in the jungle there, in the ruins under the jungle, and it's said that they occasionally whisper to the god Empress and advise her to, you know, kill all the foreigners on the island. And that's a very old one's concept, the idea
Very
that
much.
these gods are whispering into people's ears and telling them to do horrible things. So that's an important component of what's going on here. And it also, you know, makes you think of the way that Quaid whispers to Danny through the glass candles, and Bloodraven whispering to Bran through dreams. So, you know, if Martin famously likes to deconstruct the idea of gods by giving you an actual explanation for it. This is something he's done in a lot of his sci-fi short stories, where it turns out God is actually, well, it's the Grishka. It's some weird hive mind, gelatin, ooze, fungus type thing. Or, you know, the gods are actually the hive mind of the dead green seers, you know, the old gods in the Weirwood. So
Yeah.
these are basically Lovecraftian ideas. And so what's cool to realize is that the Lovecraft influences aren't just like the things like the deep ones, you know, the idea of fish people and names like Kadath and stuff, but the broader concepts, some of the sense of terror and wonder, you know, that informs some of the plots like Bran and Euron are heavily touched by Lovecraftian sort of overall vibe and feel. So a couple of super chats, just going backwards real quick. Thanks, guys. Marvin Martian sent in another one, and I think we already talked about this because he was talking about, he says, since cosmic balance is George's goal, does that mean he's secretly Thanos? And we did cover that he does have an Infinity Gauntlet. And yes, we have, South Park does work in a little bit of Lovecraft, don't they?
They did. They had Cthulhu literally in the show, like in 2 episodes.
Wasn't it like the one where Cartman?
Yeah, he takes over the world with Cthulhu. It's awesome.
It was like a 3-part episode, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That was my first introduction to Cthulhu ever.
Yeah.
You just doxed yourself, Silas.
And then Ian Milne came in with a really generous super chat. It's in some other currency, so I don't know exactly how much it is, but it looks generous. I'm going to assume it's quite generous. And Ian Milne is actually our newest dragon patron, whose dragon name I shall be unveiling at the first section break. So look forward to that. And thank you very much, Ian. And did he attach a question? Nope. So it says first time watching live, and he's excited. So thanks for joining the crew, Ian. You went from myth curious to myth head. How's it feel?
I am not drawing shape of the water porn, Eliana.
No.
Oh gosh, is Eliana stirring things up in the chat? Thank you, Eliana. We appreciate that.
Ironically, I put that on right before this stream because I haven't watched it yet, and I was like, "This is surprisingly on topic for me."
Somebody said it was the super chat was 90 eurons.
90 eurons.
I think that means euros. That's cool. Shows how much I know. I don't even know the sign for euro. I am from America. Sorry.
It's a meter.
It's all right.
You look at it, kind of looks like 2 horns too. You know, look at the euro. Yeah. Perfect for today.
So I'm going to begin the script here, but like I said, there's going to be several sections where I'm going to stop. We're going to sort of chat about what's going on. So it'll be weaving in and out of scripted material today. I'll also tell you that what started as quote unquote the script for this episode has become 2 scripts. It's definitely 2 episodes worth of material. So we're going to, not sure exactly where we're going to stop today. I've got a couple different stopping points in mind, depending on sort of what time it is and how fast we're going. And I'm not sure when we're going to do part 2 because next Sunday is Super Bowl Sunday. So we might have to do it like maybe Monday. And I got to talk to Silas and Quinn and see when they are available. So we'll give you an announcement on when part 2 is coming. But my intention is to do it next week. I just don't know that we'll be doing it Sunday morning before the Super Bowl because it might be hectic. Although, I don't know, are either of you like big football fans or what? I mean, what do you guys usually do on Sunday?
Oh, yeah. No, I'm throwing a big party.
Oh, you're throwing a big party. Okay. Well, maybe I'll come to your house then.
Yeah, you should. Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, we'll figure that out. But like I said, there's a lot of old ones material. It just sort of opened up, you know, I dove into it and it kept going and going. And so I've learned not to try to cram too much script into the live presentations because then it just sort of gets rushed. So we've got a good amount of material. It's very exciting. In fact, I think this one is going to be one of the most exciting episodes we've done in a while. I've been working on it for like 2 years. And at first I thought it was tinfoil. And the more I dug into it, the more solidified it becomes. So now I'm not even sure what it is, but it's freaky. So here we go. All right. What about Kirk Cousins? What happened to Kirk Cousins? Stone Dancer's asking me if I'm sad about Kirk Cousins. It's off season. What did he get hurt in the off season? What happened? We'll have to, sorry.
Like we know.
I haven't heard anything. I've been on Twitter.
Yeah, no, football. Sorry, football talk. Who cares? Apologies. All right, so the great old ones, guys. The great old ones. Sacred Order of Green Zombies, part 5. I often tell people one of the most amazing things about A Song of Ice and Fire is George's ability to incorporate elements and ideas from so many different influences to create his own tapestry of symbol, archetype, and myth. I'm sorry, I'm going to make this text a little bit bigger so I can see it better. There we go. Yes, I often tell people one of the most amazing things about A Song of Ice and Fire is George's ability to incorporate elements and ideas of so many different influences to create his own tapestry of symbol, archetype, and myth. As we all know, George studied Norse myth in college and draws from it quite heavily. And George also draws from J.R.R. Tolkien, who in turn drew upon Norse myth to create his fantasy world. But George is also drawing from many other mythologies and religions, as well as from selected bits of world history like the War of the Roses, and even things like Marvel Comics, or Hanna-Barbera's Thundar, as you guys know, which is an old Saturday morning cartoon that began each week with a runaway planet/red comet type thing, cracking the moon, causing disasters on Earth, followed by a hero, Thundar, who fights with a glowing white sun sword. It seems to me that George pulls from absolutely any idea or story which has influenced him along the journey of his life, be it myth, history, or comic. And he'll even throw in references to obscure things like Oscar Wilde stories or Grateful Dead lyrics, or the Giants-Patriots Super Bowl game from a few years back, speaking of football. Woon Woon. We'll talk about Woon Woon in a minute. All of these and more are synthesized together into the harmonious maelstrom of stories and characters that make up A Song of Ice and Fire. Now, this might sound complicated and difficult, but just remember, the result is the highly readable series that we know and love. Song of Ice and Fire never becomes weird or clunky because of these kinds of references to external ideas. I mean, you probably flew right by most of them on your first read, as I did. Most of these influences show up in the symbolism, in the world building, and in the backgrounds of the characters. The things that make up the set and setting for the players to play on. The players themselves are always on center stage, the heart in conflict. But the richness of the set and the script owe a lot to Martin's ability to creatively synthesize all the great things which have inspired him. By doing so, he's carrying the torch of his forerunners and inspiring a new generation, people like you and me, to expand our knowledge of literature, myth, history, and, I guess, Marvel Comics. It's almost like a time capsule mode of storytelling. But early on, Martin decides to include flaming swords in his story, since they're such a good staple fantasy element. So instead of trying to reinvent the wheel, he's going to draw upon his favorite flaming swords from, well, everywhere. So we get nods to Sigurd's Graham from Norse myth, King Arthur's Excalibur, Elric of Melniboné's Stormbringer, the magic swords of Tad Williams's Memory, Sorrow, and Thorn, Aragorn's Narsil, and the meteor swords Anguirel and Anglikel from Tolkien's Silmarillion. And let's not forget Darth Vader's red lightsaber, or Thundar's sun sword, or that flaming sword held in the hands of the angel guarding the entrance to the Garden of Eden. Lightbringer is not a one-for-one adaptation of any of these swords, but rather a descendant or a cousin of them all. So, today we're going to talk about the old ones, both Martin's version of the old ones and the more famous old ones from the works of H.P. Lovecraft. You might think that since H.P. Lovecraft is the only one to write about the old ones, Martin must be adapting his old ones pretty much straight from Lovecraft. But au contraire, my friends. Turns out that Lovecraft isn't the only one to write about the old ones. And the other folks who have written about them lived centuries and centuries and even millennia ago. What do I mean? Well, as George R. Martin likes to say, keep reading or keep listening, as it may be. All right, so let me get to my section music ready, and we'll unveil the new Patreon name. First of all, guys, what do you think of my intro? General concept, we're all familiar with it, but comments on the synthesization of influences that Martin likes to do.
Yeah, that's definitely George R. R. Martin. He takes from a lot of different places. I mean, you could go on and on with like the references to other other writers of science fiction and fantasy and horror. So yeah, but Lovecraft is definitely one of the major ones that he uses over and over again.
It's definitely the thing that really makes this whole process rich for me, I think, and a lot of the myth heads, is like we appreciate the learning. You know, if you look at where I was 3 years ago before I started digging into A Song of Ice and Fire, I just knew so much less about so many things.
Yeah.
You know,
totally.
So
it's my favorite part. Like I've gotten so into Norse mythology, and you know who Snorri Snorkelson is, or Sturluson, whatever, the guy who wrote all the
absolutely
down. Like it just blows my mind how interesting these worlds are that I had really never touched before Game of Thrones.
Yeah, I have to think that that's part of the intention. You know, some of the people that I understand the least in the fandom are the people that are like, no, we shouldn't talk about things outside of A Song of Ice and Fire. We should just talk about A Song of Ice and Fire. And like, dude, you're crazy. You're crazy.
That's willful ignorance.
I mean, I sort of understand where it's coming from. And I do try to always, you know, I try to avoid just sort of vamping out into external mythology for the sake of it. I always try to dwell on the things and tie it back to the story, because the story should be the center. But I mean, I have to think that George is inviting us to learn about all this by putting this stuff in there. So,
yeah, I mean, yeah, he constantly inspires all of us to learn and read and educate ourselves more, as Silas was saying.
Excuse me. So,
yeah, isn't it George R. Martin's quote that says a reader lives 1,000 lives? Isn't that in one of the books?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's on your bookmark, Quinn.
Yeah, it is on my bookmark, but I didn't read it. Is. It is. Oh, damn. Okay.
I just found this book recently. You guys should check this out if you get a chance. It's an incredible book about Snorri Sturluson, and like, you know, he was kind of like an Icelandic gangster basically, but he took the time to write down all the sagas so that we actually know about Thor and whatnot through him. You know, and he was a Christian in theory. So it's a little bit filtered, but it's just incredible, like what he went through in his life. So anyway, check this book out if you get a chance.
I too have read that book, and I recommend it very highly. It's excellent, and it flies off the page. It's kind of like the peeking behind the curtain of Norse myth. It gives you an idea of how, you know, how those myths gestated and how they're written down, and it talks about the life of Snorri in particular. And yeah, it's fascinating. It's a good read. I think it won some awards, in fact.
Really? Yeah.
I want to
I'm
say
glad
that
you read
did,
it. It's so good. I'm blown away.
It gets the LML award at least. So. All right, so this section is called The Old Ones. This section is brought to you by our newest dragon patron, Yggdragares, the Stormworm, the dragon of the loch, whose scales are sea green, whose wing membranes and spinal cord. It is said that Yggdragares, a descendant of Nidhogg, is foretold to encircle the well of Mimir until the days when the long winter comes again. I feel like the music was too loud.
Yeah, I didn't hear any names. I don't know about the people in the chat, but I didn't hear any of those names.
Okay, well, I'll read that one. I'll read it again. So the dragon is Yggdragares, and I'll even put that in the chat so you can see how that is spelled. And I'm going to explain the reference. It's a double reference. So Yggdragares, the Stormworm, the dragon of the loch, whose scales are sea green and whose horns, wing membranes, and spinal crest are burnt orange. It is said that Yggdragares, a descendant of Nidhogg, is foretold to encircle the well of Mimir until the days when the long winter comes again. There you go. So, okay, everybody. Now I've got like 270 people, or how many people are watching, telling me the music was too loud. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Yes, it was too loud. In any case, that's Yggdragares, and That's obviously playing on Yggdrasil, but it's also playing off of the famous dragon of Celtic mythology. And hopefully I didn't close the page. Where is it? Oh, fucking hell. Oh, I've got it right here. So dragons in Celtic mythology, one of them is called Y Dreg Gosh, and it's Y space DDRAIG GOCH, the red dragon. And this is one of the most famous dragons in Celtic mythology. So I just sort of smushed that together and got Yggdragares. So there you go. That was a long explanation. Okay, where's my script? Sorry, I've got like 5 windows open here. So the old ones. So you're cruising along. You're reading through the World of Ice and Fire, and you've worked your way all the way to the Essos material in the back of the book. And you come across this really weird place called the Holy Isle of Ling in the Jade Sea. It's a large, verdant island which is home to 10,000 tigers and 10 million monkeys, according to Lomas Longstrider. That sounds cool. And slightly weirder are the spotted humpback apes, said to be almost as clever as men, and the hooded apes as large as giants. Okay, this place sounds exotic, you think to yourself, and it seems like evolution is happening here. And then things start to get truly creepy in only the second paragraph. Take it away, Quinn.
Ling's history goes back almost as far as that of Yiti itself, but little and less of it is known west of the Jade Straits. There are queer ruins in the depths of the island's jungle, massive buildings long fallen and so overgrown that rubble remains above the surface. But underground, we are told endless labyrinths of tunnels lead to vast chambers and carved steps descend hundreds of feet into the earth. No man can say who might have built these cities or when. They remain perhaps the only remnant of some vanished people.
All right. If you're like me, or Quinn and Silas and Mallory, that's the kind of thing that you get excited for. Am I right? Underground cities, vanished people. Tell us more, right?
Yeah.
Well, the narrative returns to conventional. Yeah, I know. That's the good shit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, Martin keeps the hardcore fantasy very much you know, under wraps. He only gives us little glimpses of it, but this is what you call a glimpse. So
Yeah.
the narrative returns to conventional history about how Ling was colonized by Yiti and how it has 2 types of people, the very tall native Lengi and the very short Yitish. But your eyes can't help but roam down to the sidebar on the next page, where it tells us more about those ruins in the jungle. And it is here that we encounter the old ones.
Legends persist that the old ones still live beneath the jungle of Ling. So many of the warriors that Jarhar sent down below the ruins returned mad or not at all, that the god emperor finally decreed that the vast underground cities' ruins should be sealed up and forgotten. Even today, it is forbidden to enter such places under penalty of torture and death.
Hot damn. Now, that is really some good shit. Underground cities from which people either come back insane or not at all. It's very mysterious, and there's one other reference to the old ones in the Ling section a bit further on.
It was mariners from the Golden Empire who opened Ling to trade, yet even then the island remained a perilous place for outsiders, for the Empress of Ling was known to have congress with the Old Ones, gods who lived deep below the ruined subterranean cities, and from time to time the Old Ones told her to put all the strangers on the island to death. This is known to have happened at least 4 times in the island's history, if Kaliko Votar's Jade Compendium can be believed.
Okay, so it's even creepier now. The god Empress of Ling has congress with the old ones, and every once in a while, they just sort of tell her to execute all the foreigners. All right, well, that's lovely. And also, vote Kiara for Congress. Death to all the foreigners. 2020. Catchy, right?
Relevant.
Yeah.
I mean,
A little
they
too
have,
much on the nose there.
you got to be a hardline anti-immigration person to run for Congress in Ling, I think. So Nice. And by the way, Sandry, I've got the camera on you here as we
Oh,
talk,
no.
so we can watch you draw. So.
Don't watch me struggle with buildings.
Should I come back in like 5 minutes or?
Yes, please.
Okay. So anyone with an even a passing familiarity with the works of H.P. Lovecraft will probably recognize the phrase, the Old Ones. The Old Ones are, quoting from the Lovecraft Fandom Wiki, a group of unique, malignant beings of great power. They reside in various locations on Earth and once presided over the planet as gods and rulers. And of course, we expanded on that in the intro a little bit. They are separate from the other gods and monsters, such as the Deep Ones, who also appear in A Song of Ice and Fire, or the Chthonians, or beings like Yog-Sothoth, Azazoth, and Nyarlathotep, or something, whatever his name is. Although I should even say that that's a little bit blurry. Sometimes those last three are counted as part of the Great Old Ones. So there's a little bit of...
Do you know about like the Derleth controversy, if you will?
No. Can you tell us about it in brief?
Yeah. So one of his best friends, maybe, let's just say they were best friends. This guy, August Derleth, after Lovecraft died at age like 38, which is pretty young, all of a sudden there was nobody to manage all the material that he'd created. So Derleth created Arkham House to publish it and started putting it out throughout the 40s and 50s and adding new stories. And Derleth was like more of a Christian than sort of the cosmic unknown beliefs that Lovecraft had. So he tried to organize things to make sense in a more theological way. And there's some controversy around like, who's included in the quote unquote great old ones versus the outer gods versus the gods of Earth, because it was never as explicit from Lovecraft's own writing. So that's the controversy in brief.
Yeah, I know about this. George R. R. Martin has actually said that he hates Derleth. Well, I don't know if he used the word hate, but he doesn't like it because he feels like it takes away a lot of the mystery, like some of the later stuff. But yeah, and I agree.
And that's a very Martin thing to say about it. And of course, I mean, who can classify beings that are beyond the comprehension of mortal man, right? I guess, isn't that the whole point? So exactly.
Yeah. It's kind of presumptuous, isn't it?
Yeah.
So in any case, the point is when you see the Old Ones in Ling, in the world of Ice and Fire, this sets off the red flags. If you've ever read any Lovecraft, you're like, okay, wait a minute, the Old Ones. So the Old Ones, like we were saying, they're beyond comprehension, and in particular, they use a lot of mind control and psychic warfare, and they're generally bad news for mortals. Those are the things that we need to know. So generally speaking, there are a handful of very clear references to H.P. Lovecraft in Far Eastern Essos, such as Kadath, a city in the Grey Waste beyond the Five Forts, or Carcosa, which is similarly beyond the realms of mortal men on the edge of the map. Lang itself is a name drawn from Lovecraftian lore, where it takes the form of either a plateau that exists only in the dream world, or possibly, because it varies a bit from story to story, as an ancient city in Antarctica built by who else? The Old Ones. Then there's Ib, Sarnath, the Cult of Starry Wisdom, all of which are from Lovecraft, as well as basically everything about Ashai and that black meteor worshipped by the Bloodstone Emperor, who founded the A Song of Ice and Fire version of the Church of Starry Wisdom, which is from Lovecraft. Since magically toxic meteors that poison people and the land is a reoccurring element in a few Lovecraft stories, such as The Color from Outer Space, which aren't they making a movie out of that, guys? Quinn, you look excited.
Yes, I just heard about this, but I don't know much about it, but I just heard about it. I don't know how they're going to do it, but we'll see.
So I haven't read that one, but what I know about it is that there's a meteor that falls that essentially begins killing the land and turning it to gray ash, and it drives people crazy or something like that, right?
Yeah, it just mutates and destroys everything. The people go mad slowly and eventually die. So it's just like it just kills everything.
And I was
really uplifting.
Well, so Lovecraft, par for the course. He's a very cheerful guy. But I was already keying into the idea that perhaps Ashai was all poisoned and weird because of a meteor that fell, as opposed to the city being built out of oily black stone. It makes a lot more sense to me that a city that large was built out of regular stone, but there's a poison meteorite sort of poisoning the land, killing everything. Only ghost grass can grow. And then somebody told me about The Color Out of Space, and I, read the wiki on it, and I was like, hey, wait a minute. That's probably where he got that idea. I mean, that sounds exactly like Ashai. So
that's a good catch.
And that could explain why, you know, nobody can really go there and live very long, because it's plain old toxic. You have to be a shadowbinder or something to even withstand the magical power of that meteor that's laying in Stygi in the very nice meteor temple that they have there. So in any case, that's my personal.
I definitely see that, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
shrine.
I like that idea a lot, obviously. But the idea that something's there and it's toxic and it's just like grutting to land. Quinn, you already slammed Bird Box for me, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Bird Box is trash.
Yeah.
I don't care what you have to say, people in the comments.
No, like I watched it, and the first time I watched it, I was like, "Oh, this is totally Lovecraft," and I had to explain it to my folks because I was home for Christmas. But yeah, like it's interesting to see how much George just straight pulls from Lovecraft, for sure. Sorry, kind of off topic.
No, that's a good addition. And the other thing I was going to say is that I would love to wait. Hold on a second. I've got three things in my head at once. Is that movie The Color Out of Space? Is that going to have Nick Cage in it?
Oh, I hope so.
Is it?
I
think
hope
it
so.
said that it did. Are you a Nick Cage fan?
I mean, I'm not against Nick Cage. It's just like
I am.
haven't seen
I'm
something
anti
that
Nick Cage.
I don't know. I haven't seen something that I've liked in a really long time. Like I liked him when I was a kid. I don't know.
As long as he gets disgusting and cruel meteor poisoning, I'll be happy. And then the other thing,
you have to watch Drive Angry, and if you watch it as a comedy, the both of you, it's a Nick Cage film, and there's a line where he says, this bad guy says, like, "I'm gonna eat you like my morning grapefruit," and it's just horrible. But if you watch it knowing that you're watching it as a comedy, it's a lot better. So there's my recommendation to redeem Nick Cage for you guys.
that sounds like about what you have to do to make that work. But
yeah.
In any case, I'm looking forward to that, and looking forward to anything with meteors in it, because, you know, moon meteors. So that's very cool. In any case, yes. So if you've recognized any of these nods to Lovecraft as you read the Eastern sections, you probably came away with the idea that just as Martin draws from Tolkien and the same Norse myth that Tolkien drew from to create most of the Northern culture and weirwood magic, he's using a lot of Lovecraft ideas to create Eastern Essos. You'd be right. And I think Martin is actually making something of a statement about Lovecraftian lore here. So Tolkien is credited with creating basically the template for modern fantasy fiction, right? Eventually, fantasy authors essentially began using and repurposing his orcs and elves and hobbits in their own fiction. Maybe changing the names sometimes, but essentially Tolkien made the template. And I think that what's going on here is that by George having his own version of Deep Ones and Old Ones, Martin is telling us that in his mind, Lovecraft's monsters have entered that universal fantasy lexicon, if you will, along with the orcs and the hobbits, and that other authors should basically feel free to adapt them to their own stories. What do you think about that, Silas?
Yeah, I think that's one of his most brilliant points, is that you should have your own view, your own take on these influences. So he combines them in such a way that they add to the story, and he's able to, you know, maneuver the myths to fit his stories and to make them more bold and more rich, I think. But he's not afraid to like take, you know, a well-known myth and work it into the way he sees it or the way he feels it should be. So I really like that. It's not just taking templates and running with it. He's really actively molding the myths himself.
And a lot of times I feel like he's having a conversation with those authors that came before too.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah. And he even talks about that with Tolkien, you know, sort of like taking what he likes and adding his own commentary on it. So it's very thoughtful. And we've even found that with some of the universal tropes that he plays with. It's very much like he's like, yeah, we'll do that, but we'll, you know, it should be this way, you know, that kind of thing. So, and A Clash of Kings is basically Tyrion dealing with Aragorn's tax policy. So, you know, and that's one of my favorite books is Tyrion's A Clash of Kings arc. But
agreed.
Okay,
agreed.
So for some reason, a lot of people make the mistake. Sorry, super chat. Yes, before I go on. Harrison Grand Williams says the idea of the meteor in a temple in Stygia just blew my mind. Great work, LML and the Myth Friends. Yeah, so basically imagine oily black Stonehenge. That's with like a creepy Lovecraft altar in the middle. That's I think that's a pretty good idea. What are you drawing, Sammy, by the way? What city is LML and the Myth Friends?
Sorry, I really like that. That's the next drawing. Some kind of terrible underground city.
Excellent.
With some kind of critter. It's gonna get tentacly up in here. I just said chat, so.
Excellent.
You know,
go ahead.
I still have this drawing that San gave me at Ice and Fire Con last year. She was cheering me on from the audience when I gave a little Lovecraft panel. So,
wow.
Yeah, I should have had her sign it. I should have had you sign it, but it's got the cute Thulu on it, right?
Yeah, it was probably like the first cute Thulu.
Yeah, perfect. I
think that was. That's like proto cute Thulu.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's as good as a signature, basically.
Yeah, I mean, that's her sign, you know? I hope you run with it.
I will.
Ridiculous Ed says he sent in his 420. Oh, there it is. Yep. Thanks. He's just popping in. Thank you. I appreciate that. Ridiculous Ed Tole. All right. Yeah, everybody press the like button. You know, helps the video get seen. Titles. Bloody. Disclaimers. So the tales of people... oh, no. I skipped a paragraph. So for some reason, a lot of people make the mistake of recognizing these Lovecraftian influences in some of these elements of A Song of Ice and Fire and concluding that they are just nods to Lovecraft, as if that precludes them from being relevant to the story. That is silly, because they do all kinds of stuff constantly, and it never means that that's all it is. One of the famous football references comes in the middle of John's death scene with Woon the Giant standing in for Phil Simms, a New York Giants quarterback who wore the number 11, which is 1-1. Woon 1-1. That's it. So Patrick wears Sir Patrick, the person that Woon kills, wears a blue star on silver and white, or actually many blue stars on silver and white. That's his sigil, which is basically the symbol of the Dallas Cowboys, the hated rivals of the Giants. But those blue stars also help Sir Patrick to symbolize the others in a different scene. And of course, John's death scene itself is kind of important. So while some of these Lovecraft nods don't really mean much, like the cities in the Grey Waste, the concept of the old ones is not inconsequential, but rather something more. The tales of people going mad from exploring the ruins of the old ones in the jungles of Ling is very, very consistent with Lovecraft, as we mentioned, where the human mind struggled to maintain sanity in the face of forces far greater than itself is a major theme of his work, perhaps the major theme. People are constantly going insane in Lovecraft stories, to put it simply, and it's always due to mankind trying to comprehend something which is just too terrifying for the human mind, as we were talking about. In the Lovecraft universe, Ling is an abandoned city built by the Old Ones, or it's a plateau with multiple abandoned cities, as I mentioned. And in A Song of Ice and Fire universe, it's an island with abandoned cities built by the Old Ones, which is pretty much the same thing. The Old Ones whispering in the ear of the Empress and commanding her to commit mass murder is very Lovecraftian and consistent with the modus operandi of the Lovecraftian Old Ones, who use psychic invasion and suggestion as their preferred tool. But there's something else going on with Ling that is very mysterious, that at first doesn't appear to really have anything to do with Lovecraft, but which will lead us back to a different sort of Old One. It has to do with those native Lingi people. Take it away, Quinn.
On the southern third of Ling dwell the descendants of those displaced by the invaders from the Golden Empire. The native Lingai are perhaps the tallest of all known races of mankind, with many men among them reaching 7 feet in height and some as tall as 8. Long-legged and slender, with flesh the color of oiled teak, they have large golden eyes and can supposedly see farther and better than other men, especially at night. Though formidably tall, the women of the Lingai are famously lithe and lovely, of surpassing beauty.
And I am just trying to pull up that image of the Lingi. I'll tell you what, I'll just share. I got it right here. You guys probably remember this image from the World Book. There is the very tall Langi woman and the shorter Yutish man. And yeah, it's quite the pairing. One of those odd couples you see. But hey, it's true love, right? Okay, so let me go back here. All right. So large golden eyes that can see better in the dark. Hello. That can only remind us of one thing. The children of the forest.
That was not Arya's voice, nor any child's. It was a woman's voice, high and sweet, with a strange music in it like none he had ever heard, and a sadness that he thought might break his heart. Bran squinted to see her better. It was a girl, but smaller than Arya. Her skin, dappled like a doe's beneath a cloak of leaves. Her eyes were queer, large and liquid, gold and green, slitted like a cat's eyes. No one has eyes like that. Her hair was a tangle of brown and red and gold, autumn colors with vines and twigs and withered flowers woven through it.
That was from A Dance with Dragons, and elsewhere it says that the children have nut brown skin. You may not have a clear image in your mind of teak, the word used to describe the skin tone of the Langi, but it's basically a golden-hued medium brown. And so when you say oiled teak, that suggests a shade darker than medium. So you picture a, sort of a South American golden brown hued skin tone. The point I'm making here is obvious. The skin tone of the native Langi is very close to that of the children of the forest. And the very unique, large, golden eyes, which can see in the dark, again reminds us of the children of the forest. Now, the Langi don't have slitted cat's eyes like the children, although the tiger symbolism of Langi's valued tiger skins, which Illyrio trades in, by the way, could be a nod to cat's eyes and perhaps even skin changing. And of course, we've also talked about the idea that when the Bloodstone Emperor, quote, married a tiger woman, that could have been a god empress of Lang, who could have been known as a tiger woman because tigers seem to be sacred on Lang. But that's something we'll talk about in the second half of this episode. Now, however, large eyes are generally found on creatures which are nocturnal or sometimes cave-dwelling. And like the old ones in their underground cities, the children of the forest that we see are living underground in Bloodraven's cavern. In A Game of Thrones, Maester Luwin tells us that they've always done so.
They were a people dark and beautiful, small of stature, no taller than children even when grown to manhood. They lived in the depths of the wood, in caves and crannogs and secret tree towns. Slight as they were, the children were quick and graceful.
Note the physical descriptions here. Dark and beautiful, slight, quick, and graceful. Compare that to the Langi, who are described as slender, lithe, and lovely. And again, with matching skin tones and eye color. If the Langi were not so tall, most everyone who read The World of Ice and Fire would immediately suspect them of having children of the forest blood, I think. So here is what I think. I think the old ones of A Song of Ice and Fire are some kind of cousin to the children of the forest, the tall elves to the children's short elves. I think the native Langi interbred with these tall, elf-like old ones, just as there are hints of people breeding with magical beings all over the story. I think the unusual traits that we see in the native Langi are evidence of their old ones' ancestry and clue us in to what the old ones might have looked like. This would be comparable to Jojen having moss-green eyes like a child of the forest greenseer. The Crannog men have a trace of children of the forest blood, and so they are a bit shorter than average men and occasionally turn up with green eyes and green gifts like Jojen's green sight. The large golden eyes, which are ideal for seeing in the dark that the Langi possess, really do make sense as a trait originally found in these subterranean dwelling old ones. Thanks, Zoom Zoom. I appreciate that. Token of appreciation there. Thanks, buddy. Likewise, we can assume that the extreme height is an old one's trait. If the old ones were short like the children, then the Langi would have become shorter by interbreeding with them, as the Crannog men did. Instead, the native Langi are said to be the tallest people in the world, rivaling the tall men of Sarnor and the long-vanished Maize Makers of Lorath, who left behind only their mazes and their very large bones. From this, I can only conclude that if the Langi interbred with the old ones, the height of the native Langi can probably be traced to the old ones, just as the golden eyes probably can be. If the old ones are some kind of elf, that would make sense. Fantasy elves, like those in the Lord of the Rings, are frequently tall, after all. They would be some sort of taller cousin to the children in this case. Now, we'll come back to the height issue in a moment, but there was an exciting clue about the children of the forest and caves delivered to us in the Arion chapter of the Winds of Winter that George has released early on. There's a passage where Arion is in the Rainwood in the Stormlands, a place that used to be populated with the children of the forest, and she's underground in a cave and sees something rather remarkable.
All at once she found herself in another cavern, 5 times as big as the last one, surrounded by a forest of stone columns. Damon Sand moved to her side and raised his torch. Look at how that stone's been shaped. Those columns in the wall there. See them? Faces, said Ariane, so many sad eyes staring. This place belonged to the children of the forest 1,000 years ago.
Silas, before I go in and give my thoughts on this, what is your thoughts on you've seen that bit before, right?
That was just read, yeah.
So what's your thought? What the hell do you think that is?
I mean, it's ancient for sure, and did you go away? It's fantastic to that he's weaving that in there. It's hard for me though to decide what it's going to do. It's also interesting in that same chapter, if I remember correctly, in that same sample chapter, there's a little tidbit about I think the Isle of Hoth or the Hoth of Man or something like that. Some island off the coast has like all the young women or the novices are like stolen by raiders from the sea. So that's also very Lovecraftian as well. So there's something going on in this area they're exploring right there. It's obviously an ancient hotbed of children of the forest, Lovecraftian activity.
Totally. Quinn, you have thoughts on this freaky underground face shit?
Yeah, about those. It makes me wonder if the children can carve faces in anything and like produce like this magical effect. If this is like some kind of spell that can just like be put, I can like carve this into like the side of a building. I don't know anything, but like they chose weirwoods specifically because there was something specific about those trees that was like especially powerful or potent. And then we're just seeing like a maybe even more primitive form of the same magic, and they were like using these columns. Or maybe like I've actually heard some people suggest that these at one point were trees, but then something went down and they got turned in stone, maybe like over time. I don't know how possible that is, but yeah.
That doesn't seem likely to me, I have to say, because they're so far underground. This isn't like Casterly Rock, the Stone Garden, which is like a grotto that's like getting some sunlight. Like they're way underground at this point. And essentially, these are stalactites and stalagmites that have joined together, which of course happens in caves, and they end up looking like pillars. And it also says, although this is a transcription of George reading, so we can't trust the words 1,000% on the accuracy of this, but it says faces not only on the columns, but also on the wall. Mm-hmm. And the wall is definitely not a petrified tree. So to me, it's pretty clear they're carving faces in stone here. So the only question is, could they use them magically, or is this some sort of like done in imitation of the heart trees kind of thing?
I think that it's probably just, I think that it probably does have some kind of magical thing to it. In my opinion, I have been throwing around the idea for years now that like all the caves are like connected under Westeros. That's what I think. I think that the children, if they wanted to, could navigate from that cave beyond the wall, maybe to this place. That's just my personal, I think that's probably something like that. Because like there's all this talk when they're in those brand chapters, she's all like, oh, these caves, no one knows how far they lead. Some say they go on forever. Like I feel like that's probably true. That they could, it's maybe like maybe there's like remnants of an entire underground society that the children of the forest had. We don't know. They claim to have been on Westeros for 1,000,000 years, according to Leaf. So that's a lot of time.
Some kind of creepy. Sorry, go ahead, Luce.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say I really like that, and that's probably what I'm drawing.
That's what I'm saying. Like cities, if we're going to talk about like hidden cities underground, like the children of the forest are they're cave people with. I mean, how do we know? We don't know what they've got underground, and there could be tons of structures under there. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that a lot of people are looking forward to. Like, how far do these underground caves go? Can you go under the wall and get all the way back to Winterfell crypts and get on the river, that dark river underground, and get all the way back to Winterfell? So it's possible. I mean, it's definitely like the kind of thing you'd find in a fantasy novel. So we shall see. And of course, Ravenous Reader, who I don't think is here today for whatever reason, I know she would want me to read this quote from The World of Ice and Fire. Their music and song was said to be as beautiful as they were, but what they sang of is not remembered, save in small fragments handed down from ancient days. Maester Childer's Winter Kings, or the Legends and Lineages of the Starks of Winterfell, contains a part of a ballad alleged to tell the time Brandon the Builder sought the aid of the children while raising the wall. He was taken to a secret place to meet with them, but he could not at first understand their speech, which was described as sounding like the song of stones in a brook, or the wind through leaves, or rain upon the water. So that's an interesting phrase, the song of stones in a brook. Now, that he could be just trying to evoke that trickling, babbling brook sound, and that could just be a phrase. But when you think of those who sing the songs of earth, oh, there's Ravenous Reader. Okay, so those who sing the songs of earth, their voice sounds like the song of stone. So maybe, you know, stones are part of earth. So if they can see through trees, why not through stone, right? I mean, it's not exactly far-fetched.
Well, I like that idea because I always think that the werewoods they are literally Westeros. They're like everything that's in Westeros, right? So when Varamir Sixskin dies, right, he goes into the werewood for a little bit, and he becomes a part of not just the werewood net, but everything. Right, he's like the eagle, and he's like the tree, and he's like everything that's in Westeros. So why not? If it's all connected, why couldn't they use stone or anything else? They can see through animals. They can see through the eyes of animals, literally. Why not through stone? Unless it has to be living. I don't know, but yeah.
Eliana says, "I'm pretty sure those are just the lyrics to Colors of the Wind, but I know every rock and tree and creature has a life, and a spirit has a name." I'm sorry, I don't know the tune well enough to sing. I know that.
Every rock and tree and creature has a life, has a spirit, has a name.
Thank you, Sandrickson.
Yeah.
Sandrickson, I think you've just coaxed a super chat out of Ian Milne. Nice one. Well. Hey, Zach Grinikoff is here. Hey, Grin. Good to see you, buddy. All right, so we've talked about the caves there. And like I said, I don't think they could be trees. I think those are stones. So it would seem that what we have here is just what it looks like. Evidence of children of the forest carving heart tree faces into stone. Is it possible that, Ancient Alien's voice, the carvers of these faces were able to look through their stone eyes as they would the face of a heart tree and also spaceships? That would be something of a game changer, right? We can't make this assumption without more evidence, but you know, this is interesting. I mean, setting aside the issue of the faces, we've never really seen any evidence of the children working in stone at all, apart from perhaps flint napping some dragon glass knives for the Black Brothers. So this really has the potential to change the way we view the children. We're told that they did not build castles and cities as man does, only those secret tree towns, which I presume look like Ewok villages. But is it possible? Is it possible that they were doing more underground than simply living in caves? Were they shaping the stone like the old ones in their underground cities? The only other suggestion of the children doing anything with stone comes from Kat's memory of the legend of Storm's End from A Clash of Kings.
A seventh castle he raised, most massive of all. Some said the children of the forest helped him build it, shaping the stones with magic. Others claim that a small boy told him what he must do, a boy who would grow to be Bran the Builder.
What are you laughing at?
Nothing. It's just like time traveling Bran, though. I'm just saying, but go.
So it's always been hard to know what to make of the notion of the children shaping stones with magic, since that doesn't sound like anything that we associate with the children. I've suggested before that this could be a garbled account of dragon lords using their fused stone technology at Storm's End or perhaps elsewhere. Although if there is fused stone at Storm's End, then it would have to be hidden beneath the curtain wall because we don't see it. And that really doesn't make sense. If you could make fused stone, you'd probably just make the whole castle from it, as opposed to only the base or the foundation. Still, it is possible that the outer masonry we see was added later, so we can't rule it out. And if you think about the high tower in Old Town, there's a fused stone fortress at the base that they then built on top of. So maybe it's kind of like that. But all we know is that the only people said to have been able to shape stone with magic are dragon lords creating fused stone with dragon fire and sorcery. So the fact that we can't come to a satisfactory explanation for this line about the children shaping stone with magic is what makes it tantalizing. There's a mystery here that we don't understand yet, it seems. It's possible that the answer has something to do with those stone faces on the pillars in that cave in the Rainwood. It seems likely that we don't know everything there is to know about the children yet, and I think George has intentionally kept their secrets for the last leg of the story. We already expect to learn a lot more about them from Bran's weird visions in the Winds of Winter, and the fact that he has a character whose plot line doesn't really involve Greenseer related stuff, Ariane, wandering into an old Children of the Forest cave, really shows that this is something that's coming to the fore in the final books. It won't just be in Bran's plotline. It could pop up anywhere. Still, with all that said, Ling is a long way from Westeros. However, if you've read The World of Ice and Fire, you probably remember the tale of the Ifakevron, a short race of woods people that used to live in Essos, north of the Dothraki Sea and south of Ib, which is also quite a long way from Westeros. Here are 2 quotes about them.
In the southeast, the proud city-states of the Quaithe arose. In the forest to the north, along the shores of the Shivering Sea, were the domains of the Woodswalkers, a diminutive folk who many maesters believed to have been kin to the children of the forest.
And then this one, courtesy of the sea snake, Corlys Velaryon.
The fabled sea snake, Corlys Velaryon, Lord of the Tides, was the first Westerosi to visit these woods. After his return from the Thousand Islands, he wrote of carved trees, haunted grottos, and strange silences. A later traveler, the merchant adventurer Brian of Old Town, captain of the cog Spearshaker, provided an account of his own journey across the Shivering Sea. He reported that the Dothraki name for the lost people meant those who walk in the woods. None of the Ibonese that Brian of Old Town met could say they had ever seen a woodswalker, but claimed that the little people blessed a household that left offerings of leaf and stone and water overnight.
What's going? Did I say sneeze snake? Did I say that? Or was that just? Or are they just riffing in the chat there?
I just wanted to bring back the sneeze snakes. I'm sorry.
The sea snakes are always welcome. Always welcome. Oh, it's 119. Look at that. Boy, I don't know if I can get more baked. I came in pretty baked today, right from the beginning. I don't know. I got to sacrifice for the people. I guess I got to hold up my reputation. So these woodswalkers sound exactly like Children of the Forest, do they not? Or at least something very similar. And woodswalker is a phrase that reminds us a lot of White Walkers of the Woods, another name for the others, who seem to have been created in part through Greenseer magic, of course. Setting the potential clue about the others aside, it would seem that the story of the Ifakevron is included in A Song of Ice and Fire primarily to show us that Children of the Forest, or creatures of their sort, once lived all throughout the world, and not only in Westeros. There's one other potential race of beings that sound like they could also be related to the children.
Northwest of Sithorios, in the Summer Sea, lies the mysterious island of Nath, known to the ancients as the Isle of Butterflies. These people native to the island are beautiful and a gentle race, with round, flat faces, dusky skin, and large, soft, amber eyes, oft flecked with gold. The peaceful people, the Nathi, are called by seafarers, for they will not fight even in defense of their homes and persons. The Nathi do not kill, not even the beast of the field and wood. They eat fruit, not flesh, and make music, not war. The god of Nath is called the Lord of Harmony, oft shown as a laughing giant.
No. Hold on. You just called him the Lord of Harmony. We have to stop and appreciate that.
I know.
Stanley, file that away. Quinn, carry on.
The god of Nath is called the Lord of Harmony, oft shown as a laughing giant, bearded and naked, always attended by swarms of slender maidens with butterfly wings. 100 varieties of butterflies filter about the island. The Nathi revere them as messengers of the Lord, charged with the protection of his people. Mayhaps there is some truth to these legends, for whilst the docile nature of the Nathi seem to make their island ripe for conquest, strangers from beyond the sea do not live long upon the Isle of Butterflies. You're muted.
Oh,
All hail the Lord of Harmony.
Here
Yes.
he is.
Are you drawing him already?
Yeah.
The Lord of Harmony.
He's
I was about to say, Quinn, you've gifted the chat with something to work with here.
You know, one question I have about Lang is, I wonder if the Empress is going to kill all of the non-natives at some point in the main story. You know,
That would be so interesting,
right? And it would like key some sort of return of the old ones of some level. You know, it just makes you wonder that he included that you know, at least twice in the past they've put all the
4 times.
non-natives. 3 times? Yeah.
4.
4. Wow. Really murderous.
That would be interesting, because the way we would hear about that, we would hear it like through some other character. It would be like just some rumor. Oh, I hear she put all these people to death, and it would be like, no, she didn't. It would just be the rumor.
Well, so right at the end of A Dance with Dragons, we hear a rumor about the Gray Plague running around ET. So that actually would be a good reason to close the island to foreigners. So yeah, I like it, Silas. And Sandra, this is awesome. Oh man,
He needs to be more harmonious.
Make him more harmonious.
I
don't know either.
Give him like a tuba.
Some bagpipes. I don't even know. All right, so again, we see the large golden eyes. See, I've got thematically appropriate golden eyes. Large golden eyes in approximate skin tone, which I do not have. I'm very pasty white. But the people of the Nathi have dusky skin, and that is again in that golden brown, medium brown sort of range. And so we've got golden eyes, we've got dark skin, and we've got diminutive stature. So all these are potential matches for children of the forest. Once again, one can't help but notice the Taoist philosophy of the Lord of Harmony, which is very consistent with the beliefs of the children of the forest. And like the children, the Nathi live in nature and seem to be largely peaceful. They worship, and Quinn, don't give me any of your evil children of the forest tinfoil. The children of the forest are happy little elves. They live in concert with nature. They only care about the balance of nature. And when they kill people, it's only because those people are bad and they're hurting nature and they're hurting the trees.
mean, I think that's true mostly, but yeah.
No, I'm teasing with you. I mean, we've talked about it before. The nature lore is always double-edged. Sir Nunos can be, you know, he can be a killer, and he's somebody to fear if you go into the forest. So that's kind of the idea of the elves. Like, you go into the forest and start cutting down the heart trees, and you know, you might get your throat cut. But they're still nice. In any case, the Nathi are even more peaceful, you'd say, than the children. They seem to be total pacifists. And of course, Missandei is a treasure. Well, Show Missandei is a treasure for a different reason, but Book Missandei is a very different character, and she is obviously very wise. And anyways, I'm just sort of rambling. So the Nathi worship a very Garth-like figure, the Lord of Harmony, who you can see on your screen. And it must be said, he's very Garth-like. He's bearded and laughing and naked, and he's surrounded by swarms of maidens. That is very, very Garth-like. It's very Jolly Green Giant. It's very. I think of the ghost of Christmas Present from Christmas Carol.
Yeah,
you know, that's the kind of vibe. So happy young Robert Baratheon. So Nath is quite far away from, well, everything really. And again, we find ourselves on an island, as we were with Ling. The children of the forest tell Bran that they've sung their songs 1,000,000 years, which would mean 1,000,000 years. And although we have no way to know the truth of that, it seems logical to view Ling, the forest of the Efekevron, and Nath as the last little pockets and remnants of the elves, quote unquote, that remain outside of Westeros. If, in fact, these other races are related to the children of the forest at all, which is, of course, a big if. A complementary idea to to that of the children and related elf creatures once having lived outside of Westeros is the fact that giants also seem to have existed outside of Westeros, namely the Jogwin, the so-called stone giants. The quest to puzzle out the nature of the Old Ones has one other thread to follow besides the elf-related ideas. There are two other cultures which we might be able to draw a tentative link to, primarily based on height, and those would be the Sarnori and the ancient Lorathi. So the Sarnori, the Teges Fen in their language, which means the tall men, are relevant because the very approximate physical descriptions mostly matches the Langi. They're exceptionally tall. They're, in fact, compared to one another, as being the tallest people in the world. The Sarnori have a similar medium dark golden skin tone, similar to the Dothraki, whom they're almost certainly related to. The difference is in the eye color. The Sarnori typically had black eyes, again, like the Dothraki, instead of the golden eyes of the Langi. As I mentioned earlier, both Lang and Sarnor are words taken from Lovecraft, so it's very plausible that Martin is imagining the Song of Ice and Fire versions of these places as being linked as well. The ancestors of the Sarnori seem to have come over the Bones Mountains from eastern Essos, the former lands of the Great Empire of the Dawn, and they have their own Azor Ahai-like legend of a hero named Huzhor Amai. So Huzhor Amai, I think I keep misspelling it. That's why I kept saying it funky, because there's actually not a second H in there. It's Huzor. Huzhor Amai. That could be relevant because, according to Yiddish history, Lang was a part of the Great Empire of the Dawn. And that means there actually could be a plausible genetic link between the Sarnori and the Langi, albeit a very, very ancient one. Lorath is perhaps the more intriguing match. Here I'm speaking of the ancient people who first settled there, who do not appear to be related to or connected to the later inhabitants of the city known as the Lorathi. Before the modern-day city was built, there was an interesting religious cult who lived here, followers of the blind god Boash, who were ascetics who sought after enlightenment and nirvana. But before them, an albino, a mosquito. Before them, there was a people known to us only as the Maize Makers.
Sprawling constructs of bewildering complexity made from blocks of hewn stone, the Maize Makers' constructions are scattered across the isles, and one, badly overgrown and sunk deep into the earth, has been found on Essos proper, on the peninsula south of Lorath. Lossorun, the second largest of the Lorath Isles, is home to a vast maze that fills more than 3/4 of the surface area of the island and includes 4 levels beneath the ground, with some passages descending 500 feet. Scholars still debate the purpose of these mazes. Were they fortifications, temples, towns, or did they serve some other stranger purpose? The Maize Makers left no writings. The Maize Makers left no written records, so we shall never know. Their bones tell us that they were massively built and larger than men, though not so large as giants. Some have suggested that mayhaps the Maize Makers were born of interbreeding between human men and giant women. We do not know why they disappeared, though. We do not know why they disappeared, though Lorathi legend suggests that they were destroyed by an enemy from the sea, Merlings in some versions of the tale, Selkies and Warismen in others.
Sorry, that was a typo on my part. But there you go, the Maize Makers. So this is, again, one of the most awesome corners of the fandom, as far as, not fandom, the lore that the fandom likes to look at. The Maize Makers, like, they're very hard to connect to anything. Silas, do you have any ideas about the Maize Makers?
I do. And it's an old idea that I found on Westeros.org that has the Migo, who are like this Lovecraftian beings from outer space who come, and they're known for building things. It's just, it's just an idea. I don't know if George would go that deep into Lovecraftian lore to weave in the Migo, who are these outer space beings who came to Earth and building big cities and stuff. We're just known for building stuff, and they're kind of like slug-like beings or something. I don't know. There's some pretty cool drawings of them online. But I also know that, like, I think Boash is probably Azathoth, you know, the blind god at the center of the universe, right? If they're worshiping a blind god, it's a pretty strong call out to Azathoth. So that's always my theory on that.
So what's the deal with Azathoth?
Well, he is the universe, let's say. It's like he's like a cosmic nuclear being that dreamed up the universe because he's sleeping at the center of the universe, and he's held asleep by the outer gods who sit around him in a circle and sing to him, because if he ever wakes up, he'll stop dreaming and the universe will blink out of existence. So he's the most awesome, powerful, but he has no brain. It's just sort of a being that exists, that makes us all exist, and yet has no concept that it even exists. So it's kind of like the idea being it's like a really scary, tentative universe that we live in that may just blink out of existence one day.
That sounds suitably unnerving.
I think that's true. That's cosmic horror for you, but yeah. Exactly.
So Sanrixian, just devastating to anyone trying to pay attention to any of the things we're saying. So you've got what do you got here? This is how the stone faces came about.
Oh, yes, this is how the stone faces came about. There was one mischievous child of the forest named Donald, and he just kept carving on rocks, and that was for Quinn. And they even gave him a little headband here that he made of sticks and tied it on so he could be a myth head rock. And somebody said it looked like Renty, so.
Oh boy.
Oh my god.
And I hope you guys enjoy my maiden faces. They're not getting any better than that.
Okay, alrighty. Well, we've explained that mystery. All right. How's the Forbidden City coming along? Did you go away from that one?
Let's look.
Ooh, nice.
It looks really good. It's got some unspeakable horror surrounding it.
Yeah. Some kind of critter. I'll go back to it.
Stone Dancers, is that why he looks derpy? Because he's a myth head?
He might be on the body of Garth. We don't know.
Might be.
I'm really proud of his face, though. It's very, very good. He knows he's doing something naughty. Naughty myth head.
That's basically the face of my parrot goose, like 50% of the time.
I like how the other child with Forest is like freaking
Hey,
out.
cover his butt cheeks. God damn it. Give him a little deer tail to cover his crack or something. Got to keep it. It's a family show. There you go.
Hell of a family.
Yeah, Jojo Lady Dane says there were civilizations known as sea peoples invading around 1100, 1300 BC. Could be playing on those ancient legends. Yep, it could be. And I think those sea peoples are most likely Phoenicians, and he's definitely into Phoenician stuff. So in honor of moon meteors and the artwork, Morley sends in a very generous super chat. Thank you, Morley. And thank you, Sanrixian.
You're welcome.
Maybe I'll send you an invitation next time.
Maybe. We'll see.
Fail. What a fail. Hey, it's Aziz. All right. You're just in time for the dark, creepy shit, Aziz. Let's get back on the script here. So what are you drawing now?
Goosifer.
Nice. Okay. So the underground portions of these stone mazes, which seem to be the larger portion of the complex as a whole. And actually, let me just go back. It's been a minute. So the key part of this that I want to focus in on, we just read this long description of Lorath, is that it says, Lorraeasin, the second largest of the Lorath Isles, is home to a vast maze that fills more than 3/4 of the surface area of the island and includes 4 levels beneath the ground, with some passages descending 500 feet. So that's pretty far underground. I don't know if you've ever tried to dig 500 feet deep out of stone, but it's a lot of work. You have to be dedicated to make that happen. So, the underground portions of these stone mazes, which seem to be the larger portion of the complex as a whole, really do match the descriptions that were given of the underground cities in the jungles of Ling. That doesn't mean they're connected, of course, but when taken together with the very large skeletons, which seem to be somewhere between the height of giants, which is 12 to 14 feet, and men, which is about 6 feet, it seems that we might be in that 8 feet or so region again, like the Langi and the Sarnori. The main difference between the mazes of Lorath and the subterranean cities of Lang is the insanity. There are no reports of bad things happening to people who visit the mazes of Lorath, certainly not like at Lang. We don't know why that is. Perhaps the old ones abandoned the Lorathi site after their wars with the Merlings and Selkies, or perhaps they remain on Lang to give the God Empress bad advice on issues of tourism and immigration. Or perhaps one place is cursed and the other not. Or perhaps there's some other reason. Overall, these links are tentative, and they're meant to be. George is trying to create the feel of older cycles of existence lying beneath the layers of more modern history. So all we can ever get are glimpses of the deep ones or the old ones or the Maize Makers. They're supposed to tantalize us and leave us wondering what came before. However, when Martin references things from other famous works of literature like the old ones, he's basically inviting us to dig into the source material to get a better sense of the context that he's drawing from. In this case, I read a long and twisting Lovecraft story called The Doom That Came to Sarnath, and I found some juicy nuggets which will inform our quest for the truth that lies beneath the jungles of Ling. I also told you that Lovecraft wasn't the only one to write about the old ones, so let's take a look at those things and see what was on Martin's mind when he created these mysteries. Return of the Men with Antler Hats. I'm going to pull up a couple of Patreon names. And in the meantime, Sanrixian, tell us what you're drawing.
Come back to me in 1 second, please.
Silas Toms. give me some somebody. I need like 60 seconds of airtime from one of you guys. How about that?
Sure. What was I just thinking about? So, the sea people myth being such a deep part of Lovecraft, it was kind of amazing to me when he just straight up called out the deep ones as like the background of the Ironborn. I never expected such a direct link to the Lovecraftian myths. So that does really interest me in like what may have happened in the past with these sea people, with these Merlings, Silkies. I don't really even know how they divided all that up. Like, what is a Merling versus a Silkie? Like a merman can't include Silkies. I always wonder.
I think they're all probably based off of the same legend, and they just have different names for like the same thing.
Yeah,
I like the idea that before the Hammer of the Waters shattered the Arm of Dorn, the Northern Ocean and the Sunset Sea were completely divided, and you had two different races of fish people that then fought a civil war once the barrier was down.
Oh, that's cool. That's cool. I never thought of that. I like that.
Yeah, it's very logical when you think about it.
Yeah, because there's got to be more going on if they're under the ground or under the water, which like it keeps hinting at. They've got to have some interesting, complex politics going on there. I did just see Aquaman too.
Yeah,
Aquaman was awesome, by the way. I
saw it in 3D. It was amazing.
Yeah,
and I don't even usually like the superhero movies either. Now, Silas, somebody's saying you look like my old pot dealer. Is there any truth to that?
It's me.
Is there any
I can neither confirm nor deny that I was a troublemaker in the 90s.
It's me, Silas. What's up?
Yeah, you can just see me, sliding a 5 to somebody, right?
Prank caller. Who is this?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Painkiller Jane didn't like Aquaman. Oh well, sorry, Painkiller Jane. I don't know. I didn't like it. I thought it was pretty decent.
I liked Aquaman a lot. I don't know why. I feel like people are biased against DC movies. I'm just gonna go ahead and say it. I don't feel like they're as bad as people say they are. I don't know what's going on. I feel like Justice League did not get a chance. I don't know.
This is
I don't
bugging
know.
you.
I hardly see any of them. I only saw Aquaman because it had Jason Momoa, and we were looking for a movie to go see
Yeah.
one weekend, and that was what was there, and so we saw it, and it was like, oh, okay, it wasn't terrible.
Exactly.
That's
I
kind
feel the same way. You know, the story is what it is, but the visuals were cool. So love seeing those movies in a theater. It's
Great
just
visuals.
so fun.
There's definitely a lot of problems with all the superhero movies and critiques that are, you know, well placed.
I mean, people love the Avengers, but I'm like, why didn't Doctor Strange just like use a portal the entire time to like teleport to wherever they were going to teleport? I'm like, in his movie, he's like teleporting to other dimensions. I'm like, why can't you teleport to another planet? Like, why does no one point out those like Marvel plot holes? I'm just saying. I'm a little bit.
This sounds like a live stream you and Sandra should do. I can sense there's energy here. No, so seriously though, let's let me just hit this up. So the next section is going to be called God damn it. So many friggin' windows up. Return of the Men with Antler Hats. There we go. Hopefully the music won't be quite as loud this time. This section is brought to you by our dragon patrons. Bronze Steries of the lily white scales and bronze horns, wing bones, and spinal crest. A wise old dragon riddles with sphinxes. It is said that Bronze Steries once forged a life-size Valerian scale Silas set in a single night. By Vesperies the Lightbringer, the Shadowfire dragon, whose scales are dark as smoke, whose horns, wing bones, and spinal crest are the color of molten silver, whose eyes are two black moons. Still too loud. Oh well. You guys are just complainers. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's the problem. No, it's probably too loud. Sorry. Oh well. Did you hear some of that?
No.
No,
I mean, I didn't. It was the music was too loud. I knew you were. I could hear you talking, but I couldn't hear anything you were saying.
Okay, I'm gonna do this in my Micro Machines voice. Bronze Steries of lily white scales and bronze horns, wing bones, and spinal crest, a wise old dragon and riddles with sphinxes. It is said that Bronze Steries once forged a life-size Valerian steel set in a single night. Some say it was Bronze Steries who first uttered the phrase much and more. Vesperies the Lightbringer, the Shadowfire dragon whose scales are dark as smoke, whose horns, wing bones, and spinal crest are the color of molten silver, and whose eyes are two black moons. It is said that Vesperies is the secret spawn of Meraxes. It is known by some as the Phoenix of the Hellhold.
Oh, that was so good.
Alrighty then. I will stop at nothing.
I think my ears are bleeding.
Yes, yeah. Aziz is impressed. Well, I did go on History of Westeros and say, what is the stupid thing you got to say 5 times on their show?
Irish wrist.
Oh yes, Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Irish wristwatch. Bam, son. Anything else you'd like? Okay, let's get back to the script. Sorry, this is not what you pay me for. All right. I gotta catch my breath, man.
You can view this drawing of you while you're catching your breath. Probably the best one I've ever done.
I actually like the Silas. The Silas is looking strong.
It's a pretty good Silas.
Asking me about
trees.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's avatar worthy right there, Silas. Put a little color in that. You got to get the red hair, red face, pretty much red everything.
The red god.
Yep, Silas the Redbeard. That's him. This reminds me of the time when I accidentally listened to LML's podcast at 1.5 speed. It sounded like LML was on meth. I went from myth head to meth head. All right. Yes, don't do that. I don't recommend that at all. So, Return of the Men with Antler Hats. Here's where Martin's creative blending of multiple outside influences comes in. The old ones are a race of Lovecraftian beings, it's true enough. But we've also talked quite a lot about the horned god archetype of European folklore, which can manifest as Cernunnos, or Herne the Hunter, or the Green Man, or a host of other related horned deities, and of the absolutely massive influence this folklore has on A Song of Ice and Fire. Curiously, one of the classic names for the horned god is the Great Old One. Dun dun dun. That's right, the Great Old One. And here I shall share my screen so I can give you a horny blast of Cernunnos art. Whoops, where'd it go? How did that? Oh, I clicked the link, sorry. There it is. Nice. This is Cernunnos by Maxine Miller. And if you go to my website and link, you can click on the picture and get to this page where you can buy this print for $10. There you go. Got to give credit to the artist, right? Oh, wait. Senrixian Scream was shared that whole time. Sorry. Let me just do that one more time.
I saw
You
it.
saw it very, very tiny in the bottom corner. Very professional, very professional. Okay, here we go. This is Cernunnos by Maxine Miller in all his glory. You got the crescent moon in between the horns. He's holding the horned snake and this sort of horseshoe type thing, which means something. Somebody tell me what that means. I do not know. Anybody know? We'll see. We'll see if someone in the chat knows what he's holding. It's some sort of device. I'm sure it's magical. And yes, it's a bit hot. Definitely. Cernunnos is he's a handsome stag boy. I've got another picture down here. Here's this one. This one's ripped, dude. Look at those abs. Those are abs for days, abs for eons even. He's again got the snake and that sort of device in this hand. And we'll focus on the midset. What's under that loincloth? We all know what's under there.
Is it an instrument? I don't know.
Anyways, sorry guys. It should be a little bit horny, right? So.
And I get in trouble for drawing butts.
Well, but he's got a loincloth, see? It's all about the loincloth.
Okay. I see how it is.
Yep. Modesty. Modesty is everything. It's all about the suggestion. You gotta want to know more, you know? Okay. All right. Oh, it's a torque. Well, but what's it do? What's the significance of it, Wiz?
Symbol of kingship.
Well, he is a king. He's a stag king. So this is kind of important, as we know. The horned god ideas feature prominently in the legends and the cultures of Westeros, from Garth the Green to the Sacred Order of Green Men on the Isle of Faces, to the Antler Hats of House Durrandon and then Baratheon, to the Horned Lord constellation, and the legendary wildling king beyond the wall of the same name. If the Old Ones of Ling are playing into this stagman Horned Lord idea, they might be more relevant to the story than first appeared. The idea of Cernunnos as an Old One is also a big boost for the theory that the Old Ones of Ling are perhaps some sort of elf creature, potentially related to the children of the forest, because Cernunnos is very elf-like. And more specifically, he's a stag man, and the children have brown skin, which is dappled with white spots like a deer. You can kind of see how this could all come together. The Old Ones could be the long-lost race of stag men. Specifically, I'm thinking about Garth the Green and the Sacred Order of Green Men, who were mysteriously formed after the pact between children and first men that was signed on the Isle of Faces. We've been wondering what those green men are, assuming that they're not just children of the forest. My best two ideas were that they were either green men as in green zombies like Cold Hands, or that they were indeed some kind of elf-like stag man humanoid. Well, it could certainly be both. Zombie stag men, if you will. But let's think about the stagman tall elf option on its own. Could the Old Ones from Ling be our stag men, who are created in the image of the great Old One, the horned god himself? Did they come all the way to Westeros to become the green men who live on the Isle of Faces? Or perhaps the Old Ones on Ling and the green men are simply related beings? Well, as Bran tells us, oh, let's wait, I got somebody answering me. It's symbolic. The torque is symbolic of high class and wealth, nobility and status. Okay, cool. So Cernunnos is a king, I guess, just put it that way. So as Bran tells us, all the tales agreed that the green men had strange magic powers. Bran learned from Old Nan that the green men ride on elks and that sometimes they have antlers too. We knew that already, and we knew that this image of the stag man is an old and powerful one, which left its imprint all over Westeros. Garth the Green is cast in the role of a stag man. He was said to be the first man in Westeros. The Durrandon tradition of antlered men dates back to the ancient times in all likelihood, while even the wildlings who were cut off from Westeros by the wall thousands of years ago know of the tradition of the green men. Grigg the Goat, who is implied as a horned fellow, you'll notice because he's Grigg the Goat, tells Jon that he dreams of visiting the green men on the Isle of Faces, And they even refer to the constellation Westeros calls the Stallion as the Horned Lord. And that's, of course, named after an ancient king beyond the wall who took the name the Horned Lord. So this is an old tradition, perhaps one of the oldest set of cultural and religious beliefs in all of Westeros. So was it based in fact? Did these stag men ever actually exist? Are the green men who guard the weirwoods on the Isle of Faces really the old ones from Ling? Well, what if I told you that in Lovecraft's version of Ling, the native race of humanoids is a type of horned and hooved almost human? That's right. Although the old ones themselves are either sort of formless deities, or sometimes they're weird 5-tentacled and 5-winged blob things, the abandoned cities on the plateau of Ling are inhabited now by some horny goat people, as we see in Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. They actually sail pitch black merchant ships around the dream world, and they can even fly them to the moon. It's true. It's weird, but it's true. In Dream Quest, they abduct the main character on one of these ships and take him, but fortunately, he's rescued by cats, whom he had previously befriended. Don't ask about the cats. It's a weird story. The point is that horny humanoids on Ling is not a new idea. That's, of course, the cats of Ulthar, and in this dream world, the cats can leap from the rooftops straight to the moon, and so they're very powerful and magical. But again, it's very very much off the topic. So, Silas, I'm not going to ask for your opinion on that, but I will ask for your opinion in just a second. So, the point is that horny humanoids on Ling is not a new idea. I mean, I did come up with it on my own through the process outlined up to this point. But then someone told me that, yeah, actually, Lovecraft already put horned folk on Ling. It was definitely a mind-blowing moment for me. So here is a good little extended bit from Dream Quest of Unknown Kadath. And the scene starts with the main character, Randolph Carter, flying on the back of a wyvern-like creature called a Shantak.
The Shantak now flew lower, revealing beneath the canopy of cloud-gray barren plain, whereon at great distances shone little feeble fires. As they descended, there appeared at intervals lone huts of granite and bleak stone villages, whose tiny windows glowed with pallid light. And there came from those huts and villages a shrill droning of pipes and nauseous rattle of crotella, which proved at once that Enoch's people are right in their geographic rumors. For travelers have heard such sounds before, and know that they float only from the cold desert plateau which healthy folk never visit, that haunted place of evil and mystery which is Ling. Around the feeble fires, dark forms were dancing, and Carter was curious as to what manner of beings they might be, for no healthy folk have ever been to Ling, and the place is known only by its fires and stone huts as seen from afar. Very slowly and awkwardly did those forms leap, with an insane twisting and bending, not good to behold, so that Carter did not wonder at the monstrous evil inputted to them by vague legend, or the fear in which all dreamland holds their abhorrent frozen plateau. As the Shantak flew lower, the repulsiveness of the dancers became tinged with a certain hellish familiarity, and the prisoner kept straining his eyes and racking his memory for clues to where he had seen such creatures before. They leaped as though they had hooves instead of feet, and seemed to wear a sort of wig or headpiece with small horns. Of other clothing they had none, but most of them were quite furry. Behind they had dwarfish tails, and when they glanced upward he saw the excessive width of their mouths. Then he knew what they were, and that they did not wear any wigs or headpieces after all, for the cryptic folk of Ling were of one race with the uncomfortable merchants of the black galleys that traded rubies at the Derleth Ling. Those not quite human merchants who are the slaves of the monstrous moon things. They were indeed the same dark folk who had Shanghaied Carter on the noisome galley so long ago, and whose kith he had seen driven in herds about the unclean wharves of the accursed lunar city, with the leaner ones toiling and the fatter ones taken away in crates for other needs of their polypus and amorphous masters. Now he saw where such ambiguous creatures came from, and shuddered at the thought that Ling must be known to these formless abominations from the moon.
So as you can see, Lovecraft's prose is not quite as smooth as George Martin's prose, as you might say.
No.
But I'm sharing my screen here real quick. I'm going to show you a couple drawings that people have done of these hooved, horny things. This is a particularly ugly rendition with not quite enough fur. But yeah, it's that is a man of Ling. And here's another one, which I prefer a little bit. It's looking like an evil satyr, essentially. That's kind of the vibe that you get from this description. And Sanri is...
It's
I
beautiful.
come from the moon.
It's beautiful.
Thank you. There, now he has six-pack abs too.
So it was actually Jojo Lady Dane who told me about the horned beings on Ling. So I had completely forgot who it was, and Jojo Lady Dane is saying that was me. So thank you, Jojo Lady Dane, who's of course a patron and a moderator and a myth head and a friend. So there you go. Yeah, he's ripped. He's like somehow chubby but ripped. That's cool. I hated that. Barrel chested. He's just big boned, you know.
Yeah.
Like the old movies when they would take off their shirts, you know, and they just...
Oh,
they don't
what's
look
going on
fit.
here?
What's up?
Sorry,
Yeah.
Silas. I was just a little distracted here by this very
Here's your Eldritch Horrors.
Eldritch Horrors and it's a very handsome stag boy there.
Trying to
Yeah,
go-
he's definitely a little bit lewd. Something about that stag boy is definitely
He's giving you the look.
he's giving a lot of looks out there.
Serving looks.
Nice. All right. So back to El Scripto. And there we go. I'm not saying this is exactly what Martin pictured the Sacred Order of Green Men looking like, but I can tell you from some of the moon lore in this book and other clues that Martin has definitely read this book. And this is the one that contains the idea of horned creatures doing occult things around campfires in a forbidden land called Ling. They aren't the old ones themselves, as I said, but Martin likes to switch things around when he borrows from stuff anyway. If my hypothesis that a race of horned or antlered humanoids known as the Green Men in Westeros are related to or the same as the mysterious old ones on the Isle of Lang in the Jade Sea is correct, then it would simply mean that Martin switched things around a bit and made his old ones the horned creatures themselves instead of the vanished people who made the cities. Given that Cernunnos, the OG stagman nature god, whom Martin seems to adore, just so happens to be known as the Great Old One, this change is actually a stroke of genius. It seems that he noticed the weird intersection of horned people and the phrase the Old Ones that exists between the horny goat people living in the cities of the Old Ones on Lovecraft's Lang and the horny Cernunnos, who is called the Great Old One. And he thought he'd have himself a lark. And thus we get Martin's Old Ones of Ling, who are really the same as the Green Men from the Isle of Faces. They're tall and dark and presumably terrifyingly beautiful, and they wear antler hats and do moon magic. The fact that Lovecraft's horned creatures, referred to as the Men of Ling, can sail to the moon on a ship in the dream world works very well with some of the mythical astronomy ideas about what Martin is doing with the Green Men and the moon. Namely, I believe that the legend of mass sacrifice on the Isle of Faces to call down the Hammer of the Waters is actually a telling of Azor Ahai performing blood magic with a child of the forest Nissa Nissa that cracked the moon. The simple idea of the horned folk from Lovecraft's Lang being able to sail ships in the dreamscape also seems very compatible with the basic notion of the Green Men as green seers who sail the astral plane on their weirwood boats, if you will. When you read about those underground ruins in the jungles of Martin's Ling that led down to God knows where, that's very similar to the main city of Lovecraft's plateau of Ling. And once again, we see it thronging with horny folk.
There, all alone in the hush, and the dusk, and the cold, rose the uncouth stones of a squat windowless building around which a circle of crude monoliths stood. In all this arrangement, there was nothing human, and Carter surmised from the old tales that he was indeed come to that most dreadful and legendary of places, the remote and prehistoric monastery wherein dwells unaccompanied the high priest not to be described, which wears a yellow silken mask over its face and prays to the other gods and their crawling chaos Nyarlathotep. Carter followed where he led and passed within the circle of standing rocks and into the low arched doorway of that windowless stone monastery. There were no lights inside, but the evil merchant lit a small clay lamp bearing morbid bas-reliefs and prodded his prisoner on through mazes of narrow, winding corridors. On the walls of the corridors were printed frightful scenes older than history, and in a style unknown to the archaeologist of Earth. After countless eons, their pigments were brilliant still, for the cold and dryness of hideous Ling kept alive many primal things. Carter saw them fleetingly in the rays of that dim and moving lamp, and shuddered at the tale they told. Through those archaic frescoes Ling's annals stalked, and the horned, hooved, and wide-mouthed almost humans danced evilly amidst forgotten cities. There were scenes of old wars wherein Ling's almost humans fought with the bloated purple spiders of the neighboring vales, and there were scenes also of the coming of the black galleys from the moon, and the submission of Ling's people to the polypus, and the amorphous blasphemies that hopped and floundered and wriggled out of them. Those slippery grayish-white blasphemies they worshipped as gods, nor ever accompanied when scores of their best and fatted males were taken away in the black galleys. The monstrous moon beast made their camp on a jagged isle in the sea, and Carter could tell from the frescoes that this was none other than the lone nameless rock he had seen when sailing into Equinox, the gray accursed rock in which Equinox seamen shun, and from which vile howlings reverberate all through the night. And in those frescoes was shown the great seaport and capital of the almost humans, proud and pillared betwixt the cliffs and the basalt wharves, and wondrous with high fanes and carven places. Great gardens and columned streets led from the cliffs and from each of the 6 sphinx-crowded gates to a vast central plaza, and in that plaza was a pair of winged colossal lions guarding the top of a subterranean staircase. Again and again were those huge winged lions strewn, their mighty flanks of diorite glistening in the gray twilight of the day and the cloudy phosphorescence of the night. And as Carter stumbled past their frequent and repeated pictures, it came to him at last what indeed they were, and what it was that the almost humans had ruled so anciently before the coming of the black galleys. There could be no mistake, for the legends of the dreamland are generous and profuse. Indubitably, that primal city was no less a place than storied Sarkamand, whose ruins had bleached for 1,000,000 years before the first true humans saw light, and whose twin titan lions guard eternally the steps that led down from dreamland to the great abyss.
So that's cheerful. So basically, he's come to this temple. He's looking at these frescoes. He sees the horned beings. He sees the black ships from the moon and the polyphemus, amorphous, blasphemy, wriggly things. Taking control of the horned people. And then there's some shit about Sarkomand, a city that's been abandoned for over 1 million years, that has an entrance to the abyss. So that is very Lovecraft. What can you say? Like I said, cheerful guy. That Lovecraft. So Silas, do you want to add to this bit of lore here, Sarkomand? And
well, what I think is interesting, along with Ceranos, another one of the gods that Lovecraft adopted straight from like Viking, Norse, or Roman mythology, that whole mix of European mythology, is Nodens, who is like the sea god who goes around chasing Nyarlathotep with his night gaunts through the dreamlands. So I don't think we'll see him in the world of Ice and Fire, but I do wonder, like, he's kind of like the Earth's or sea's protector against the outer gods and the old ones. I wonder if we'll see like some version of some kind of sea god come forward. Like we know the drowned god exists, but like will we see like a positive sea god?
Well, we could hope for like a real sea dragon to come up and just like swallow Euron's ship or something.
That would be awesome. Yes, exactly.
What was that, Sandry?
Oh, I was just thinking like a sea dragon or a kraken or something to do with Euron. We were on the same page.
Nice.
Well, and also the other thought I have there too is that the Ironborn, who are obviously sea-based, they came in and they built Harrenhal, and the werewolves that are trapped there seem to hate it, right? And it's built for like giant beings. It seems like it's like built at a scale that's way bigger than it should be, and the rooms are really big, like. And it's right next to the, the God's Eye and the Isle of Faces. There's got to be a connection there, right? There's got to be a reason that, like, the sea is trying to build this giant fortress on land right next to this incredibly important spot that we'll definitely see later with these horned guys running around. So, like, what is that there? What's going on there? You got any thoughts?
There's shades of the doom that came to Sarnath here, because the doom that came to Sarnath, essentially the very short version of it is that you had these people that built this glorious civilization, and they built it on the graves of the old fish people or something, and they disrespected the fish people. And so one night monsters came down from the moon and erased the entire city in a day, and now it's just a swamp.
Balgrog,
right.
Yeah, came.
So that version that was used in the actual doom of the Sarnori people, only they George subbed in the Dothraki for like weird, monsters or whatever, but it's very similar. They lived on the shores of the Silver Sea and all that. But think about Harrenhal, same thing. It's called Heron's Folly. It's this gigantic, monstrous castle, this monument of hubris, and it's built on the shore of this magic lake. And what happens? It gets destroyed by the dragons. And when Balerion the Black Dread destroys Harrenhal, it says he flew up so high until he was no bigger than a fly on the moon. And then he dives down into Harrenhal. So you get that same image from the doom that came to Sarnath, where monsters come down from the moon and destroy the city built on the edge of a lake that was basically built out of hubris.
Yeah, it's a good connection. But I think there's something to the, like, I don't know. I sort of see like the ancient battles that we don't know about, like the Battle Isle in Old Town, like where that came from. It has something to do with a battle against the sea peoples, right?
I agree.
The sea
Awesome. Yeah. So it seems like to me like the fact that the Ironborn took over the Riverlands and then built that castle right there, while the herons were destroyed, the castle still exists. And I'm just wondering if we're going to see like some race of Merlings or something come out and like occupy Harrenhal late. I mean, it seems like a little late in the story to be all of a sudden introducing Merling armies, but maybe he'll be able to do
Euron till like halfway more than halfway through the series. And
Yeah.
he's like the big endgame villain. So
Yeah.
Well,
I'm all for-
Amanda has picked, Crowfoot's daughter's picked up on a running dichotomy, sort of a war between the people with antlers representing the nature and the forest versus the merlings and the sea people. And they talk about the wildlings on the frozen shore. There's the walrus people and the antler people, and they hate each other.
Yep.
And that's sort of, it's a running, you know, all the Ironborn myth, they cast all the, basically everybody on Westeros is the Greenlanders, you know, the green people from the Greenlands, and they hate them. So you're right.
like
It's
that
a whole
comment.
running
It's
thing.
never too late for Merling armies. All right.
never.
They'll
Everybody
eat
knows
you
I have a
raw,
lot of
boy.
crazy
They'll
ideas
eat you
about
raw.
It's like we have the Song of Ice and Fire, so there had to be some kind of earth and water element. I'm all for that.
Yeah.
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 Because fire and
Is
water, I mean,
yeah.
fire and ice, like both are, you know, either opposed to or related to water.
Yep.
Right? Isn't there some way that if you join ice and fire together, you're like destroying water either way?
The Song of Ice and Fire is not solved through science, Silas. All right. So, okay, cool. What are you doing there, Sandra? You're adding some color to the underground city. Very nice.
Mm-hmm.
So we can tell what is murky water and what is like forbidden evil stone and what is tentacle.
We'll get there.
Excellent. Okay, so you guys kind of see what the tapestry of lore that Martin is tapping into here when he speaks of ruined subterranean cities on a forbidden isle called Ling, where men go down into the earth and come out mad. And at the risk of repeating myself, the big takeaway is that these ancient, creepy cities of Ling are the dominion of people with horns growing out of their head. Ergo, it's not as crazy as it first sounded, my theory about horny Garth people being the truth behind both the Sacred Order of Green Men on the Isle of Faces and the Old Ones on the Isle of Ling. I'll also point out that the ideas of the God Empress of Ling, or the idea of the God Empress of Ling periodically getting advice from the Old Ones to sacrifice all the foreigners on the island kind of reminds me of the legend of the children sacrificing hundreds of captive humans, according to some tales, on the Isle of Faces to call down the hammer. In both cases, we have mass human sacrifice on an island, though we can only speculate about the Old Ones, in turn harnessing the power of these mass sacrifices on Lang to work some sort of magic. But it wouldn't be hard to believe. Martin has said that we will see the Isle of Faces before the series is out, and it's foreshadowed heavily in the first 3 books as well as in the more recent, in the first 3 books, as well as the more recent histories of the Targaryen-ruled Westeros, which has people occasionally going to the Isle of Faces. That means that we should get a glimpse of these green men, whatever they are. And when we do, we might see some sort of Cernunnos-looking antler dude. He probably won't explain that, see, thousands of years ago, his ancestors came here from Ling, when the God Empress of Ling was happily married to a God Emperor of the Great Empire of the Dawn, but then that whole Bloodstone Emperor thing happened, and then everything went south, and they sort of ended up stuck in Westeros on this foggy island. No, Cernunnos probably won't explain that to whomever of our heroes ends up going to the Isle of Faces. But you and I will know that we stand before one of the great Old Ones from the, how did he put it, the haunted place of evil and mystery, which is Ling. Now, there's one more angle to this, and it again consists of Martin finding a weird natural confluence of Lovecraftian ideas and European folklore. So, among the groupings of the incomprehensible deities known as the Great Old Ones, a group which includes Cthulhu and Nyarlathotep, not even going to try, we find one named Yig, Y-I-G, Ig. Ig is a great old one who is known as the father of serpents, and he takes the form of a snake with scaled arms like a human, which kind of sounds like those worm things that was in Aurea, actually, now that I think about it. Of course, we know that Martin uses the name Ig, Y-G-G, in Ironborn folklore as a way of referring to the Weirwoods, and this is, of course, a shortening of the name Yggdrasil, which is what the Weirwoods are based upon. But if the Old Ones are the green men, and if they are green seers, then we have Old Ones living inside the Ig tree, and one of Lovecraft's Old Ones is Ig. Better yet, our idea of Azor Ahai, the father of dragons, if you will, invading the Weirwood net, would merge both Ig ideas and would give us a dragon in an Ig tree who is the father of serpents and who is either an old one or is using their magic. So that's the theory. It's not bad, if I do say so myself. The idea of some tall, old, elvish race living in caves beneath Ling, it's pretty fun. And since we should get a glimpse of the Isle of Faces, we stand a good chance of finding out if this theory is true or not. But here's the thing. If we weren't tuned into George's use of symbolism, metaphor, and wordplay, then this is about as far as we could take the theory. Well, fortunately, you know that this isn't where our theory ends, but rather where it begins. Fortunately, you know that Martin always leaves us clues via symbolism and wordplay, and boy, is that ever the case with the old ones. So that is the end of this section. How am I doing, guys? Silas, what'd you think of that?
That was awesome. That was awesome. Yeah, this is really fun. Nice combo of all these different ideas, which is your specialty, your syncretic nature. Is that the way to put it?
Yes.
Where you bring it all together. It's pretty impressive. So yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, we're all learning at the feet of the master, aren't we? And that's, I mean, I really thought this was cool when I started putting it together. It's like, oh, I mean, this is exactly how Martin works. See, at some point he notices, he's like, wait a minute. The old ones on Ling have horns, and Sir Nunos is the old one. I can sort of do a thing here. And, you know, and then the Ig thing is cool too. It's kind of neither here nor there, but once I found that Ig was an old one, I was like, wait a minute.
No, it's totally there. You know, there's that story about the snake worshiping people and the spider worshiping people in Essos that end up like fighting each other, and then the snake worshiping people probably moved to Sithorios, you know. So that's Ig, Yig, and there's another version of the snake myth. Like they're both related though. It's basically the same god.
The men of Ling fought spiders too. It's
well, it's Adalet Nacha is the spider god that they're referring to. It's like a spider with a human face, something like that. Another Lovecraftian being. So
hard pass.
What?
I said hard pass. Spider with a human face. That, right? Okay. Can I, Lucy?
And you what?
Draw Spider-Man.
I asked Sanrixian privately in the chat to draw something more serious and less funny because I'm trying to get the creepy vibe going, and you're drawing all this hysterically funny shit. But yeah, I mean, however the spirit moves you, Sanri, however the spirit moves you.
Yeah. Yeah, so I think it's definitely related. Like these gods, the worship of them, it's all there, man. You know, there was I'm sure you've read it. I wrote a little essay about it, but there was a story where George had Jaime Lannister fighting Cthulhu, or at least it was like linked to it. He ends up fighting.
Have you read that one?
No.
Yeah. I wrote a analysis of it on Gods of Terror. It's like from 2 years ago. You have to go.
So set it up. Explain what you're talking about.
So basically, there was like a fun, like almost fan fiction thing where people would take their creations and have them fight. Like I think Jaime Lannister fought Hermione in round 1, you know, and he ended up defeating Hermione. So the next round, though, he ended up fighting against the Deep Ones, and with the threat of Cthulhu in the background. And him and Tyrion sit around like researching how to fight Cthulhu in the Deep Ones, and they found the idea of the elder signs, like these signs that you can ward off the power of the, you know, squishers, deep ones, merlings, whatever kind of idea you want to go with these aquatic beings. And so they realized, though, you can't just paint it on, like you got to like etch it in metal. So it really reminds me of the Royces with their like runes, you know, and the runestone house and the runes in their armor. Like there's these symbols that fight off these aquatic beings that are the deep ones. And so it was just a fun idea. And at the end of it, on George's post, he writes that he's feeling mischievous. So I thought maybe there was something there. Like he was kind of teasing us about, read into this. It's just fun, but it's also actually something cute that could play in later. All right.
Speaking of cute, this looks like Charlotte from Charlotte's Web here.
I can't draw spiders.
It just looks like a spider.
I caused the doom that came to Sarnath. It was me. Oh.
That's outlet in the chaw there, huh?
Tell whose for it was me.
Oh my god.
Okay. Bronzion and the Royces. Nice name. Super chat. Hang on a second.
Perfect. I'd listen to that band.
Totally.
They win lots of bronze records, right?
Yeah, well, it's really heavy metal. Their first album is called Runestone. I mean, this is like sludge death metal. Okay. He says, meant to donate for a while now. I finally feel financially stable now. Thank you, Bronzion. I love geology and find the similarities between the Hammer of the Waters and the Storega slides and flooding of Doggerland in 6000 BC fascinating. Doggerland is the area between Europe and Britain, right? There's a large plateau just north of like, am I somebody tell me if I'm spouting nonsense here. Is that Doggerland? None of you guys know? God. Leave me out to dry.
No one in the entire world knows.
Yep. No, Doggerland is, yes, I'm totally correct. Yeah. Here, I'll even share my screen, show you all how smart I am, or how smart Bronzion is, I guess. At least I knew what he was talking about. So,
actually, that says Catterland. No, I'm kidding.
Doggerland. It's Doggerland. So you can see it's in ancient days of yore, all this was above ground. So Ireland, UK, everything in between there and Denmark was a very big plateau, and they've just started diving into this area, finding all kinds of cool Stone Age spearheads and various things. They're even calling it like the European Lemuria, if you will, because it seems like a hotbed of ancient activity that we didn't know existed. So there you go.
I'm glad you brought in Lemuria, because that's really important here, I think.
way to bring it back to the subject matter. Yeah. Fire away, Silas.
Well, so I was telling you about Thongor, right? Who's like basically a knockoff Conan that Lynn Carter created. He was like one of George's first editors, as I mentioned, and he wrote a ton of Conan stories, like in the later versions that they came up with in the 60s, and he decided to branch out. Instead of being paid to write someone else's stories, he'd write his own, loincloth wearing Northman myths. And Lemuria is like the setting of it all, and it's supposedly the ancient sunken continent that actually later becomes where Cthulhu is imprisoned. So it all kind of relates back to this. So and then the idea of Lemuria is basically that the reason that there's lemurs in India and Madagascar is that there used to be an ancient continent, Connectium, called Lemuria, and that turned out that wasn't true, but there's like the idea of sunken continents that was actually relatively popular during Lovecraft's time, that there used to just be continents popping up and sinking down below the sea all the time. So
I love that Atlantic. Oh, sorry, Sammy, go ahead.
I said this is your shit.
It is. No, absolutely. Some people know that I'm brainstorming my own fantasy series that's going to be like, instead of alt, European feudal Europe, it's going to be alt Atlantis, where I'm going to draw from like Bronze Age cultures, no steel, and I'll draw from ancient Mesoamerica and Greece and stuff, and all the legends of Mu, Lemuria, Atlantis. I mean, there's some really great pseudoscience that is essentially works just as like folklore at this point to draw from. So yeah, it's good. Yeah, and there's some guy who wrote a book about it being off the coast of Spain that I found very interesting. That was a good one. So
awesome.
In any case, it's all fun stuff. But let's get back to the script. Oh, it looks like a new section. I'm gonna subject you to music one more time. Let's see if I can get it. I'll tell you what, I'll play the forwards version, and maybe that will. Well, I'll turn it down a little too, but maybe if I do the forward one. Oh, I've only got the backwards one. Oh well. Oh well. This next section is brought to you by Malares the Weird Dragon, whose scales are white as bone and whose horns, wing bones, and spinal crest are as red as blood. Malares, who is native to Stygia, is the first known Stygian dragon to leave that corpse city at the heart of the shadow in over 5 millennia. It is rumored that Malares is inhabited by the spirit of a long-vanished sorceress from Ashai called Melanie Lot 7. And yes, Melanie, that is you. Oh, perfect. Oh, everyone's happy. Oh, good. Stop complaining now. I'm just kidding. I don't really, I found that I can't pull off the whole Brendan Beefish pseudo hostility thing. It just comes off as hostility. I don't know how Beefish gets away with it. I really wish I could do that, but I can't. I need to be nice to everyone or else it just goes south. Isn't that true? Isn't that true, Sandrickstein?
Quietly fuming in corner.
Quietly nodding head.
Mhm.
All right. So I ask again, did these stag men ever exist? Are the green men who guard the weirwoods on the Isle of Faces really the old ones from Ling? Prepare to get shocked. This is the first scene in Winterfell in the entire series.
For her sake, Ned had built a small sept where she might sing to the 7 faces of God, but the blood of the first men still flowed in the veins of the Starks, and his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest.
Oh my God, Ned prays to the old ones. They are the vanished gods of the greenwood. You'll notice how this also plays into the Lovecraftian ideas of the old ones as gods who are vanished or hibernating and who used to have dominion over the earth. What the Northmen refer to as the old gods is really the hive mind made up of all the dead green seers which inhabits the weirwood tree consciousness. And these are the old ones? If the first green seers were green men, then this could make sense. The old gods are the green seers, and the first green seers might have been green men who are really the old ones from Ling. I ask you, is it more likely that George Martin, steeped in both Lovecraftian lore and Cernunnos lore as he is, accidentally used the phrase the old ones in the scene where he introduces us to the heart tree in the Godswood? Or is it more likely that he did it on purpose? At the very least, it seems like he likes to draw upon the accumulated mystique of phrases like the old ones and the deep ones and the horned lord. But I think he's doing that and more. Because it ain't just Ned praying to the old ones.
The gate is lost. Donal Noy had closed and chained it, but it was there for the taking. The iron bars glimmering red with reflected firelight, the cold black tunnel behind. No one had fallen back to defend it. The only safety was on top of the wall, 700 feet up the crooked wooden stairs. "What gods do you pray to?" John asked the Satin. "The 7," the boy from Old Town said. Pray then," John told him. "Pray to your new gods, and I'll pray to my old ones." It all turned here.
That was from A Clash of Kings, from the battle to defend Castle Black, from the Magnar of Then and his wildling raiders. Satin will pray to the 7, and John will pray to his old ones, just like his daddy. The implication is the same as in the previous scene. The green seers inside the weirwood net are the old ones. Some of them, at least. The notion of the old gods as stag men has been suggested to us from the start, simply by the fact that we are told that Garth-like green men guard the Isle of Faces, an island dedicated to the growing of hundreds of weirwood trees. The idea that those green men would be able to tap into the power of the weirwoods they guard is, fairly straightforward. It should surprise nobody. Garth the Green himself was said to have planted 3 weirwood trees in the Godswood of Highgarden, and Garth the Green is described in exactly the same way as the green men on the Isle of Faces. Green skin, antlers like a stag, so on and so forth. And this suggests that links exist between the green men with antler hats and weirwood trees. Then there's the fascinating topic of the etymology of the word weir, which we've talked about a few times. This is a word which is used to describe a wooden sluice gate or a dam built over a flowing body of water. It's often called a fishing weir, and it can sometimes be used as a bridge. And most importantly, it's also called a fish garth. Ergo, a weirwood could also be translated as garthwood. And Martin plays off of this fishing weir fish garth idea when he tells us that
For men, time is a river. We are trapped in its flow, hurtling from past to present, always in the same direction. The lives of trees are different. They root and grow and die in one place, and that river does not move them. The oak is the acorn is the oak, and the weirwood. 1,000 human years are a moment to a weirwood, and through such gates you and I may gaze into the past.
Time is the river, and the weirwoods are the weir, straddling the stream without being moved by it. It's the exact definition of a weir. This is really clever writing because Martin is literally sketching us a picture of the weirwoods as a fishing weir, while also using this as a metaphor for the eternal, outside of time status of the weirwoods. It leaves us with no doubt that George is aware of the fishing weir concept and is incorporating it into his trees of the same name. I'd say we can conclude that he's aware of the fish Garth phrase too. Not only did Garth the Green plant those 3 weirwoods at Highgarden, which are called the Three Singers, and not only are the words Garth and weir interchangeable in some contexts, it turns out that the word Garth can also refer to an enclosed central garden, like a god's wood. That means that weirwoods are essentially Garth trees in Garth gardens, which is a classic example of George layering on variations of the same symbolic idea in one place, just so we'll notice it and be impressed, I guess. Weirwoods are Garth trees that grow in Garth gardens, and here's Garth, the founder of House Gardener, planting weirwoods in the Highgarden Godswood. It's like a Dr. Seuss rhyme. Do you want me to say that 5 times fast? Weirwoods are Garth trees that grow in Garth gardens, and here's Garth the gardener. Nope, see, I screwed it up. One more time. Weirwoods are Garth trees that grow in Garth gardens, and here's Garth, the founder of House Gardener, planting weirwoods in Highgarden Godswood. I think I missed a word, but anyways, you get the idea. It's layers of Garth here. So again, we must ask, given all that, is it possible that George is unaware of the meaning of the word Garth and just accidentally named his Cernunnos god Garth and his sacred trees weirwoods? No, of course not. The master is at work here, and this is high-level wordplay and a demonstration of George's mastery of folklore. The idea that Weir is also the last name of Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead, which is George's favorite band, is basically icing on the cake, but likely not the reason he chose the name Weirwood. I mean, it's even possible that he grew up with the name Bob Weir in his head, and that's what led him to notice it or research it and figure all this shit out. So who knows how it works, but you can clearly see that he's working in the fish Garth and fishing weir ideas, and that is the main point. So here is a more grisly, by the way, let me stop. Silas, have you heard that whole line of symbolism before, and are you impressed?
Yeah, that blew me away when I first heard it, that Garth and Weir were the same thing, that he was obviously drawing it into Garth Greenhand. It just blew my mind. Like, you know, are the weirwoods somehow a fish prison or like guarding against the fish? Like, what is he trying to get at there? You know, if you know, as I keep joking around about, but also kind of hinting at, there's like some ancient battle against the sea people. The weirwoods were probably a huge part of that fight somehow. You know, I don't know the answer to why or how, but that's what the symbolism makes me think.
Well, here's the deal, Silas. All the Merlings and stuff are essentially symbolic stand-ins for the others. You'll notice they're all about stealing babies, both the Squishers and the others, and they both have that pale skin. They're monsters that come. I've done some other exploration on it to be fairly confident in that, but essentially, and that was in the was in actually Green Zombies 4, the Zodiac Children of Garth the Green, when we got into the Sea Goats and Capricorn and all that. So yeah, it's a lot of the same Selkies versus Stagmen stuff. But in particular, if you look at the Merlings as others, then it sort of makes sense with the, what am I trying to say? The weird, as far as like you said, were they guarding against, you know, they trapping the fish? Are they, you know, regulating the flow of time and stuff like that? Well, yes, that has to do with the others for sure. But think about the way the Green Seer is set up. If the weirwoods stand astride the river of time, men are trapped in the flow of the river of time unless they get caught in the weir, like a fish. Once they're caught in the weir, they are essentially plucked out of the river of time. And that's exactly what happens for the Green Seer, who can then journey through all of time and space through the weirwoods. So they are essentially the caught fish. And this plays into this idea that the Green Seers are both trapped, but set free by the weirwoods. Like their bodies are trapped, but their spirits then can fly. So
I like that. I like that a lot. I still think there's room for actual sea beings with Euron out there trying to sacrifice to whatever gods, you know, like something's going on there. And the fact that, I'm sorry, what were you gonna say?
Oh, just saying it's not excluded just because it's symbolic of something else.
Yeah, no, I think you're right though. The symbolism is fantastic, and I'm glad you caught on that. That all these beings keep stealing babies just like the others, because that got me too. It also made me think of the like kind of Amazon-y women over on the east side of the Bones that gild the men. There's something there. Like I bet that they used to feed the men to their gods as well. The great fathers. So like that idea is all over, and it's not. The first time we encounter it is up beyond the wall, but that symbolism is everywhere.
Yeah, I know Crowfoot's daughter is going to get into some of that, both the idea of castration and baby stealing in some of her videos coming out. So just a reminder, of course, I know all true myth heads are subscribed to Disputed Lands already, the Disputed Lands YouTube channel, but
fantastic.
Yeah, cool. So, well, my fingers are crossed for Merlings, Silas. I think if we do see him, they'll be just on the margins, but George, will George not be able to resist? Like, I mean, he didn't say right? Dead things in the water. So what are those, right?
I'm like resisting saying something, but continue.
Go ahead, Quinn.
Yeah, no. I'm like saving it for something else because it's like a thing that I'm working on.
Dead things in the water. What's it mean? What do you think?
Dead things in the water. I mean, yeah. She just said Lord of the Rings. I thought that it could be a reference to like what do they call it? The dead marshes in Lord of the Rings. There's like literally dead things in the water. I thought there was some reason that made me think about it, and I did a video about it, and I can't even think of the reason why I thought that now. But but yeah, you can find it on my channel somewhere. But I'll have to look at it. But I'm working on something involving the deep ones right now that involves some other stuff. But yeah,
awesome.
It always made me think of Lord of the Rings, Quinn.
Yeah,
like first, and then I couldn't figure. It's the dead marshes or wherever Sam and Frodo come across those like dead kings.
Yeah, and you can't look at them.
Yeah, you can't look at them.
Yeah,
they'll get you.
Nice. Harrison Grand Williams with a super chat says, "So are the children of the forest green seers suspended in the weirwood, grateful to be dead?"
Yeah.
Well played, sir. Harrison Grand Williams, the Shadow Cat patron. Well played, sir. Well played. Okay, so here is a more grisly example of George playing with the Garth Weirwood associations, one which we looked at in Weirwood Compendium 3. I'm talking about those eyeless, decapitated heads of the 3 Night's Watch Rangers that John finds north of the wall, mounted on tall spears of ash wood. I called them grisly Weirwood totems because carved bloody eyes and bloody mouths are Weirwood symbols, and Weirwoods are symbolic ash trees because they draw so much from Yggdrasil, the great ash tree. So they are ash trees with carved faces made of dead people. That's a model of a weirwood. You get the idea. One of those rangers was named Garth Greyfeather, while the other 2 rangers were also given Horned God, Green Man names, Blackjack Bulwer, and Harry Hal. So this whole scene seems like a clue about Garth people, or horned folk, you might say, dying and going into the weirwood hive mind, becoming weirwood trees, as the green seers do. It also seems to have something to do with the green zombie theory, since these are sacrificed Night's Watch Rangers, and due to other symbolism that is off topic here. So let's sum up and bring this back to the old ones. Garth and horned people are joined at the hip. Isle of Faces guard weirwoods. The word weir is in some instances interchangeable with the word Garth, and Godswoods are George's versions of real gardens called Garths. Garth the Green is Cernunnos combined with the Green Man, basically, and Cernunnos is the Great Old One. As we saw in the first 2 Old Ones quotes, George might be implying the old gods, the beings that make up the hive mind of the Green Seers, whom we call the Weirwoodnet, as the Old Ones. So you see how this begins to come together. The first Green Seers were green men, such as we hear about on the Isle of Faces. That kind of makes sense. And it means that Garth people, these tall stagmen who are modeled after Cernunnos the Old One, were the first old gods. It kind of makes sense that the last of these horned folk might live on the magically warded Avalon-like Isle of Faces, guarding the last surviving concentration of weirwoods south of the wall. Now, you surely remember the first time we saw the horned god phrase in A Song of Ice and Fire, which comes as Ned remembers young Robert Baratheon.
He saw the king as he had been in the flower of his youth, tall and handsome, his great antlered helm on his head, his war hammer in his hand, sitting his horse like a horned god.
Perhaps more interesting is this similar quote about young Robert and his antlered helm.
6.5 feet tall, he towered over lesser men, and when he donned his armor and the great antlered helm of his house, he became a veritable giant. He'd had a giant's strength, too, his weapon of choice a spiked iron warhammer that Ned could scarcely lift.
So, giant, fearsome, antlered folk. Since the Lengi are super-duper tall, and by extension the old ones of their island as well, this quote, aligning the horned god with a giant, is tantalizing. Robert is by far our best living incarnation of the Garth horned lord archetype, so it seems like Robert's giant symbolism might be a pretty good clue about the green men being tall. The green men would have to be tall if they're related to the old ones of Ling. Also, if they were short, it seems like the humans just would have considered them children of the forest. But instead, they have this separate name, the Sacred Order of Green Men. And their descriptions as having green skin and antlers match the legend of Garth much more closely than it does the children. Thus, it is at least possible, if not probable, that the green men on the Isle of Faces, if they do exist, were actually some kind of tall Cernunnos-like people. And Cernunnos is the great old one. Heck, even those spears of ashwood upon which the heads of Garth and his fellow rangers were mounted were 8 feet tall. So those were giant Weirwood, Garth, and Horned Lord totems. If you think it's just these two possible double entendres with the phrase old ones or old one, then, well, you haven't listened to much mythical astronomy now, have you? It's actually a bit ridiculous. And we're not even going to begin to scratch the surface today. We're just going to do a little bit more. And then I'll let Silas and Quinn get back to their real lives. San Rixian, I know, is down for the crown, right?
Maybe.
Maybe. Okay, you might have somewhere to go too. I shouldn't presume. Huh?
Well, maybe.
We're all
like
about
my city.
I like it a lot. It's looking. Yeah, we're
So
gonna
much
get a little bit of it.
detail.
Yeah.
Make my window bigger so I could see it.
Yeah, I've been like mesmerized by like watching you draw it.
I hope it
Nice,
has.
yeah,
no effect.
We're getting into the detail here.
Yeah.
Nice, and it's a cat's eye. That's good.
Good catch. Might be a dragon eye too.
It is the eye of Yog Sothoth. No, I don't know.
Okay, so let's thank some more patrons and talk about the old ones at White Harbor. This section is brought to you by The Long Night's Watch. Sharon Ice Eyes, dread ferryman of the north, wielder of the staff of the gods, a weirwood staff banded in Valyrian steel. Sinxia, frozen fire queen of the summer snows, weaver of winter's coat and burner of winter's wick. Blue raven of the lightning peck, the frozen thunderbolt, whose words are, the way must be tried. And Tinjack of the dragon glass shield, a ghost hunter of the haunted forest, and righteous hand of the snow owl. I'd also like to welcome back Jennifer Taylor, Lady Diana, the ghost huntress, pursuer of truth. Welcome back. So I love that when sometimes, you know, life calls and you gotta scale down or discontinue the Patreon, and then all of a sudden, boom, they pop back up and like, hey, I'm back. It's great. Love it. Thanks, guys. And by the way, if you've ever been a patron of Mythical Astronomy, even for a couple months, you should always feel welcome. You should always know that I'm eternally grateful to you, and I am. Even if we argued on Twitter about politics that one time, I'm still grateful. Sorry. Anyways. All right. So the old ones at White Harbor. At the harvest feast at Winterfell, early on in A Clash of Kings, Bran is seated in the oaken seat of his father and presides over the feast. Harvest feasts are prime horned lord territory. That's when the horned god is sacrificed in most mythologies, as fall turns to winter. You may recall that about Garth the Green, the World of Ice and Fire says,
In some stories, the green god dies every autumn when the trees lose their leaves, only to be reborn with the coming of spring.
and that is, of course, on par for the green god. In the Oak and Holly King setup, Bran would be symbolic of the sacrificed Oak King here at the Harvest Festival, sitting in the oaken seat as he is. And of course, his name Bran implies him as food and bread for the people, which is why the crows are always asking him for corn. He's the Corn King who feeds the people with his life. And of course, you may remember that the Corn King is basically a modern name for the archetype of fertility gods that die and resurrect with the seasons, that includes Cernunnos and the Green Man and all of the other sacrificed nature gods. Dionysus is another one. And I see a super chat. Mijicam, I've got to go, but great chat as always. Thanks, Mijicam. And in comes to this harvest feast, Wyman Manderley, talking about the old ones at White Harbor, who seem to have a thing for stags.
Why, no prince is ever late, the Lord of White Harbor responded amiably. Those who arrived before him have come early, that's all. Wyman Manderley had a great booming laugh. It was small wonder he could not sit a saddle. He looked as if he outweighed most horses. As windy as he was vast, he began by asking Winterfell to confirm the new customs officers he had appointed for White Harbor. The old ones had been holding back silver for King's Landing rather than paying it over to the new king in the north. King Rob needs his own coinage as well, he declared, and White Harbor is the very place to mint it. He offered to take charge of the matter, as it pleased the king, and went from that to speak of how he had strengthened the port's defenses, detailing the cost of every improvement. In addition to a mint, Lord Manderley also proposed to build Rob a war fleet. We have no strength at sea for hundreds of years, since Brandon the Burner put the torch to his father's ships. Grant me the gold, and within the year I will float you sufficient galleys to take Dragonstone and King's Landing both. Bran's interest pricked up at talk of warships. No one asked him, but he thought Lord Wyman's notion a splendid one. In his mind's eye, he could see them already. He wondered if a cripple had ever commanded a warship. You're muted.
So, yeah. Professional. We're very professional. So the old ones' customs officers were replaced by Wyman. He surely threw them in prison, perhaps even in the Wolf's Den, which is where they have the Godswood. We'll go to the Wolf's Den in a moment, which is why I mention it. But notice that the old ones' custom agents were holding back silver, and silver coins are stags. So they're holding stags, if you will. Getting ready to ride them, holding them by the saddle piece. The green men rode stags in some legends and look like stags in others, so this seems thematically on point. Wyman then offers to build ships which Bran Stark, I guess I should say Bran, can see in his mind's eye. This seems a clear allusion to the metaphor of weirwoods as astral projection ships. He can see them in his mind's eye. For the mind to sail the universe with, that's an idea that we've explored extensively in Weirwood Compendium, of course. The Grey King's Weirwood boat is the most obvious example of this symbolism and sends the message that weirwoods are ships of a fashion, ones which the Green Seer can use, again, to sail the cosmos. Thus, Bran can see the ships in his mind's eye, and we're meant to think of Brandon the Shipwright Stark, who sailed his fleet into the Sunset Sea and was never heard from again, an allusion to being lost in the green sea of the Weirwood Net. And then, of course, his son Brandon the Burner set the ships on fire, and the burning ship is a very important Weirwood symbol that we've seen all over the place. Okay, so let's go to White Harbor then, and look for these old ones that Wyman was talking about. Spoiler alert, they are here to be found. As you may recall, the Wolf's Den is the oldest part of White Harbor, being an old fortress made of black stone, which houses White Harbor's godswood, which of course has a very old weirwood. This is from Davos's A Dance with Dragons sojourn in the Wolf's Den.
Aside from his keepers, Davos Seaworth had the Wolf's Den to himself. He knew there were true dungeons down in the castle cellars, obolates and torture chambers and dank pits where huge black rats scrambled in the darkness. His jailers claimed all of them were occupied at present. Only us here, Onion, Sir Bartimus had told him. He was the chief jailer and a cadaverous one-legged knight with a scarred face and a blind eye. When Sir Bartimus was in his cups, and Sir Bartimus was in his cups most every day, he liked to boast of how he had saved Lord Wyman's life at the Battle of the Trident. The Wolf's Den was his reward. The rest of us consisted of a cook Davos never saw, 6 guardsmen in the ground floor barracks, a pair of washerwomen, and the 2 turnkeys who looked after the prisoner. There was the young one, the son of the washerwoman, a boy of 10 and 4. The old one was Garth, huge and bald and taciturn, who wore the same greasy leather jerkin every day and always seemed to have a glower on his face. His years as a smuggler had given Davos Seaworth a sense of when a man was wrong, and Garth was wrong. The Onion Knight took care to hold his tongue in Garth's presence.
The old one was Garth.
Yeah.
Dun, dun, dun. Pretty awesome. So the old one here is actually named Garth, and he's huge too. So score another one for the notion of green men being large horned folk. As I've noted before, there are a total of 12 people staffing the Wolf's Den, with Davos as the +1 to make the last hero math that mimics the last hero and his 12 companions. The last hero math is a crucial part of the Green Zombies theory, as you know, so seeing it here with Garth, the old one, makes a lot of sense. Another of this crew is one-eyed Sir Bartimus, who seems like a pretty obvious Odin call-out. Now, as Davos sits in the cell, it says that
the Onion Knight had not forgotten Wyman Manderley's last words to him. Take this creature to the Wolf's Den and cut off head and hands, the fat lord had commanded. I shall not be able to eat a bite until I see this smuggler's head upon a spike with an onion shoved between his lying teeth. Every night Davos went to sleep with those words in his head, and every morn he woke to them.
that's a close match to Garth Greyfeather, Blackjack Bulwer, and Harry Hal, whose severed heads were mounted on spears, and the severed hands give us the bloody hand weirwood leaf symbolism. Wyman Manderley, who passes the sentence on Davos, which would have been carried out by Garth, the wrong-smelling jailer, is himself a kind of Garth symbol, being huge and gluttonous and having a very large family as he does. Most tellingly, Wyman Manderley also calls himself a Knight of the Green Hand, which is an old order of knights originating in the Reach who are very obviously inspired by Garth and the Green Men. Cernunnos and the other horned gods can sometimes be wrathful and deadly, hence the executioner symbolism of Wyman and Garth the Jailer. And you may recall that...
Oh, my bad. A few of the very oldest tales of Garth Greenhand presents us with a considerably darker deity, one who demanded blood sacrifice from his worshippers to ensure a bountiful harvest.
Having a closer look at this nasty Garth the Jailer, we see that he brings Davos porridge every morning. Whether or not the porridge is meant as a weirwood paste symbol, which I think it is, we can observe the classic fertility god role of Garth as one who feeds the people and blesses the people with abundant harvests. He actually brings him more than just porridge too. He ends up bringing him like really nice meals, and he's all mad about it. He's like grumbling about it. But in any case, pretty cool that Martin is juxtaposing both Garth ideas here, that of one who feeds people and that of one who executes people. The highlight of the scene is, of course, the story of Brandon Ice Eyes retaking the Wolf's Den. And again, we see clues that the Old Ones are the old gods of the Weirwood.
Then a long, cruel winter fell, said Sir Bartimus. The white knife froze hard, and even the firth was icing up. The winds came howling from the north, and drove them slavers inside to huddle round their fires. And whilst they warmed themselves, the new king come down on them. Brandon Stark this was, Edric Snowbeard's great-grandson, him that men called Ice Eyes. He took the Wolf's Den back, stripped the slavers naked, and gave them to the slaves he'd found chained up in the dungeons. It said they hung their entrails in the branches of the heart tree as an offering to the gods. The old gods, not these new ones from the south. Your seven don't know winter, and winter don't know them. Davos could not argue with the truth of that. From what he had seen at Eastwatch by the sea, he did not care to know winter either. What gods do you keep? He asked the one-legged knight. The old ones. When Sir Bartimus grinned, he looked just like a skull. Me and mine were here before the Manderleys, like as not. My own forebears strung those entrails through the tree. I never knew that Northmen made blood sacrifices to their heart trees. There's much and more you Southrons don't know about the North, Sir Bartimus replied.
That's cool. The battery on my wireless keyboard just died. So might be hard for me to participate in the chat. But nevertheless, this is a great little passage. We've gone into all the symbolism here before with Brandon Ice Eyes and the frozen White Knife River as a symbol of an icy white sword. Shout out to Gretchen. And all that. But this time we're looking at that sentence staring us in the face and telling us that the old gods of the North are the old ones. Once again, we see the theme of human sacrifice mentioned, in keeping with the Cernunnos theme. Add it to the Garth the Old One and his constant threats to chop off Davos's head, plus Wyman's Knight of the Green Hand status, and we can see once again that Martin has piled the Green Man symbolism up quite high here at White Harbor, alongside 3 uses of the Old One's phrase. Finally, as we've noted previously, fish garths and fishing weirs are basically traps for fish, and weirwoods can be seen as traps for green seers in that they physically pinion the body of the green seers like a fish caught in a weir. And of course, this idea could go further. Thus, it's notable to find a prison with a godswood and a jailer named Garth. Alrighty. Silas, how we doing here, buddy? We are pushing up on 3 hours.
Yeah. I love that weaving in of the Manderleys, who obviously also have their own interesting symbolism coming from the south, being the Merling team Merling. It's fantastic. So yeah, I'm really glad you highlighted this here.
So yeah, the Manderleys are interesting because they are sort of synthesizing the Fishman Merling symbolism and the Garth symbolism. I wonder if there's some sort of cycle going on there where, like, well, they used to be green men when they were in the Reach, and then they drowned, quote unquote, and now they're fishy people.
Huh. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, there's something there. There's something there for sure.
Yep, I've got that earmarked to go back to, but whoa, is Quinn, are you having a thing? You're in here twice now.
My internet went out. I don't know what happened.
I see. Cool. Well, glad you got back so quickly.
Yep.
So this next section is called Odin Says Hello, and I guess I'll spare the music since I'm having so much trouble with the music. I will just read the patron names. I would like to thank some Guardians of the Galaxy patrons, such as Sir Imriel Jourdain of the Tor, Spinner of the Great Wheel, and Guardian of the Sword of the Morning. I'd like to thank Sir Harrison of House Casterly, the Noontide Sun, who's chipped in with a couple of super chats today, whose words are deeper than ever did plummet sound, Guardian of the Shadow Cat. Baal the Bard, the Persephoenix, wielder of the Valerian Steel Sword, Creep Eater, and Guardian of the Ice Dragon, whose words are from sorrow, wisdom. And Monami of the Jade Sea, also known as Mary, Archmaester Mary, or Maester Mary, I guess it is. The Merry Deviant, Keeper of Winter Roses, Guardian of the Celestial Ghost. And I guess I'll thank, oh, there's two more here. Let's see, Han Never Solo, the Scorpion Mind, Cyber Pincher of the Weirwood Net, Guardian of the Celestial Stallion and the Horned Lord, thematically appropriate. And somebody named Mallory Sand, Storm Witch, the Hand of the Dragon, Rider of Zulfric the Black Beast, and Guardian of the Celestial Galley, aka the Weirwood Submarine. There's also Rickard Stargarian the Steelheart, Father of the Morning and Guardian of the Celestial Moon Maid. We've got a couple other Guardians of the Galaxy patrons who we need to correspond about nicknames, but there you go. Thank you, everybody. You're the wind beneath my wings. There, I sang.
You got it right this time.
Yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else dumb that I can sing real quick? I don't know. I've already done the Micro Machines voice. I've been cranking it out today. Been branching out with the entertainment.
Just oozing with talent.
I sang some Pocahontas for you too. Bonus Pocahontas.
Yeah, that's true. You did. That was a good rendition too.
Yeah.
So this will probably be the last section here, and it's pretty short. So we are almost done. But it's called Odin Says Hello. So from the one-legged Sir Bartimus, companion to the brutish Garth the Old One, to a one-legged keeper of a well in Marine, we are finding more old ones in A Dance with Dragons. This is from a Tyrion chapter.
Midday had come and gone before he and Penny reached the well, where the scrawny one-legged slave was drawing water. He squinted at them suspiciously. Nurse always comes for Yezant's water, with 4 men and a mule cart. He dropped the bucket down the well once more. There was a soft splash. The one-legged man let the bucket fill, then began to draw it upward. His arms were sunburnt and peeling, scrawny to look at, but all muscle. The mule died, said Tyrion. So did Nurse, poor man. And now Yezan himself has mounted the pale mare, and 6 of his soldiers have the shits. May I have 2 pails full? As you like. That was the end of idle talk. Is that hoof beats you hear? The lie about the soldier got old one leg moving much more quickly. They started back, each of the dwarfs carrying 2 brimful pails of sweet water, and Sir Jorah with 2 pails each in hand. The day was growing hotter, the air as thick and wet as damp wool, and the pails seemed to grow heavier with every step. A long walk on short legs, water sloshed from his pails with every stride, splashing round his legs, whilst his bells played a marching song. Had I known it would come to this, Father, I might have let you live. Half a mile east, a dark plume of smoke was rising from where a tent had been set afire, burning last night's dead. This way, Tyrion said, jerking his head to the right. You read it again.
Man, that was like the best sentence I've read this whole 3 hours too. Fuck. Oh well. I'm kidding. One leg, huh? Well, it's disguised a bit, but we know that it's meant as another Old Ones reference because this man is in charge of a well. Think of the Well of Mimir, which Odin throws his eye into in order to drink from. And because he's also hearing the hoofbeats of a horse, which is not visible, the pale mare. That's a reference to Odin riding his shamanic horses, Yggdrasil and Sleipnir, both of which are not actual horses, but instead metaphors for astral projection. I'm going to go into that a lot more in detail in the Weirwood Compendium 9, but take my word for it for now. Odin is a horned god in his own right, and he is a shamanic god above all else, the god of magic. Since Martin has modeled Bloodraven on Odin and the Weirwoods on Yggdrasil, it makes sense to see Martin calling out to Odin and the Old Ones at the same time. The idea of drinking from Odin's well would translate into A Song of Ice and Fire terms as eating the Weirwood paste. And the point is, that the mind-expanding fire of the gods can be seen in an edible form. The idea of moon onions being placed, the idea of a moon-like onion being placed between the teeth of Davos's decapitated head gets at the same idea. And so too with Garth bringing Davos's porridge. You also may remember all the people that were hung in the Riverlands with chunks of salt stuck in their mouth. So it's all the same idea. They're eating white stuff. Okay, sorry. Finally, the last paragraph mentioned that I made Quinn read. It mentioned the rising smoke column, which comes from a pyre of the dead. This is the flip side of the ash tree symbolism of Yggdrasil that Martin can use. It's a rising column of smoke and ash, which can simulate a weirwood, which is like an ash tree, with that symbolism extending to the idea of weirwoods as burning trees, and burning trees looking like mushroom clouds, and green seers having mushrooms growing on their cheek, I might add. I point this out simply to show continuity of theme here. It's a bunch of green seer and weirwood stuff with some death sacrifice thrown in. Now in Norse myth, sorry, hang on a second. Much better. Now in Norse myth, Odin is known for wandering the land in disguise, with the tell being that whatever person or animal he's disguised as will have one eye, and frequently that floppy hat. Martin gives a nod to this when Bloodraven, disguised as Maynard Plum via a glamour, appears momentarily to Dunk as a shadowed, hooded shape with one eye, though the eye turns out to be his moonstone brooch. Now check out the wandering Septon Maribald, who sleeps with the old ones.
Maribald was a septon without a sept, only one step from a begging brother in the hierarchy of the faith. There were hundreds like him, a ragged band whose humble task it was to trudge from one fly speck of a village to the next, conducting holy services, performing marriages, and forgiving sins. Those he visited were expected to feed and shelter him, but most were as poor as he was, so Maribald could not linger in one place too long without causing hardship to his host. Kindly innkeeps would sometimes allow him to sleep in their kitchens or stables, and there were septries and holdfast, and even a few castles where he knew he would be given hospitality. Where no such places were at hand, he slept beneath the trees or under hedges. There were many fine hedges in the Riverlands, Maribald said. The old ones are the best. There's nothing beats 100-year-old hedge. Inside one of those, a man can sleep as snug as at an inn, and with far less fear of fleas.
So that's pretty great. A wandering holy man who sleeps either beneath trees or under the old ones' hedges, who count their ages in centuries. Sounds like greenseer activity, right? Of course, we have caught George using phrases like beneath the trees to imply greenseer activity before, and I'm actually saving some really tremendous stuff along those lines from the Hedge Knight, of course, Dunk and Egg Book 1, for the next couple of Weirwood Compendium episodes. But even that last phrase, inside one of those, a man can sleep as snug as at an inn. We've seen the inn at the crossroads before used as a weirwood symbol. And the idea of sleeping inside of a hedge obviously sounds like people dreaming inside of a tree. So it's pretty clear stuff to me. Anyways, the next paragraph gives us a great description of Maribald. So check this out.
The septon could neither read nor write, as he cheerfully confessed along the road, but he knew 100 different prayers and could recite long passages from the seven-pointed star from memory, which was all that was required in the villages. He had a seamed, wind-burnt face, a shock of thick gray hair, wrinkles at the corners of his eyes. Though a big man, 6 feet tall, he had a way of hunching forward as he walked that made him seem much shorter. His hands were large and leathery, with red knuckles and dirt beneath the nails. And he had the biggest feet that Brienne had ever seen, bare and black and hard as horn. I have not worn a shoe in 20 years, he told Brienne. The first year I had more blisters than I had toes, and my soles would bleed like pigs whenever I trod on hard stone, but I prayed, and the cobbler above turned my skin to leather.
All right, so he's a big man, and he's both burned and shocked, which makes me think of the symbolic weirwood tree set ablaze by the storm god's thunderbolt, since it was shocked, hit by lightning, and also burned, and because that's such a central weirwood motif. The idea of his face being seamed implies cracks and crevices, like the bark of a tree, perhaps. Taking a look at his hands, we see that they are red, like the bloody hand weirwood leaves, and he's got dirt under his fingernails, evoking the idea of weirwood leaves lying in the dirt, maybe. It actually reminds me of John observing the ground at the Weirwood Grove of Nine, where it said, "The forest floor was carpeted with fallen leaves, blood red on top, black rot beneath." And sure enough, when we look down at Maribald's huge feet, we see the color black as well, as his feet are bare and black and hard as horn. In other words, he's both a good visual model of a weirwood tree and a horned lord to boot. No wonder he likes to sleep in the hedges of the old ones. And all that about leather skin might be a nod to skin changing as well, I should think. And then there's this.
Going barefoot was my penance. Even holy septons can be sinners, and my flesh was weak as weak could be. I was young and full of sap, and the girls. A septon can seem as gallant as a prince if he is the only man you know who has ever been more than a mile from your village. I would recite to them from the 7-pointed star. The maiden's book worked best. Oh, I was a wicked man before I threw away my shoes. It shames me to think of all the maidens I deflowered.
He is a wicked man, and oh ho, he's got sap inside him like a tree. Yeah, you thought I might have been stretching it when I'm like, oh, he's like a weirwood tree. You're like, yeah, maybe. Okay, LML. Oh, no, he's got sap inside him, so joke's on you. Never doubt me. He has the word of God inside him too, and he's committed much of the 7-pointed star to memory, which he uses. Oh man, that's pretty low to get the panties to drop. That's terrible. In any case, it makes us think of the weirwoods as libraries for green seers because he's got the words of God stored inside him, right? He's a repository for the knowledge of the gods, just like the trees. And look, young Maribald was more than a little Garth-like, wasn't he? What with his deflowering countless maidens and his hedonism. So it wasn't just the horny feet. He's a horny guy all the way around. He also wanders the riverlands, handing out rare and valued oranges from a seemingly bottomless bag, another nod to Garth and the Green Man lore. He carries a staff like Odin, and he uses the Quiet Isle as a kind of home base when he isn't wandering the realm. The Quiet Isle is an island of holy men who've taken vows of silence. And this, of course, makes us think of the Isle of Faces, which Catelyn describes in that first Game of Thrones Godswood scene, where George names the old gods of the Weirwoods as the Old Ones.
In the south, the last weirwoods had been cut down or burned out 1,000 years ago, except on the Isle of Faces where the green men kept their silent watch.
The Isle of Faces has green men keeping silent watch. The Quiet Isle is a kind of brotherhood of men who take vows of silence. Horny old Maribald has red hands, sap inside him, he's shocked and windburnt and seamed, and he sleeps in the tree abode of the Old Ones. Seems like a pretty good clue, linking the Old Ones to the Isle of Faces and the Green Men. You really have to like how all of these scenes with the Old Ones quotes kind of link back to each other in interesting ways, and how they all contain a lot of the same motifs. There was even a bit of green zombie talk in the Maribald chapter when he mentions that Dog has killed 12 wolves, but he's afraid of the giant wolf pack led by Nymeria, Arya's direwolf. Oh, and the name Maribald, well, since mare means sea, and the dark spots on the moon are called Maria, which is the plural form of mare, Maribald might translate to bald sea, or better yet, bald moon. One thinks of Septon Moon, another Septon from Fire and Blood, because he is also a dead ringer for a Garth figure. Speaking of Septons, let's finish off this section with another Old Ones quote about Septons from a Cersei chapter of A Feast for Crows.
The drapery swayed back and forth in a wash of crimson silk. Orton told me that the High Septon has no name, Lady Taina said. Can that be true? In Myr we all have names. Oh, he had a name once. They all do. The queen waved a hand dismissively. Even Septons born of noble blood go only by their given names once they have taken their vows. When one of them is elevated to High Septon, he puts aside that name as well. The faith will tell you he no longer has need of a man's name, for he has become the avatar of the gods. How do you distinguish one High Septon from another? With difficulty. One has to say, the fat one, or the one before the fat one, or the old one who died in his sleep. You can always wrinkle out their birth names if you like, but they take umbrage if you use them. It reminds them that they were born ordinary men, and they do not like that. My lord husband tells me this new one was born with filth beneath his fingernails.
So the High Septons have no names, eh? Because they're avatars of the gods, you say? And his own gods were the old ones, the nameless, faceless gods of the greenwood they shared with the vanished children of the forest. So the old gods are the combined and merged spirits of dead green seers, and they are the old ones, and they're nameless. And here we have the nameless godly High Septon, one of whom was the old one who died in his sleep. Was he sleeping beneath the old one's hedges like Maribald? Dying in your sleep sounds like a poetic way to talk about green seers, fading away into the green dream as they die. So the old ones may indeed have died in their sleep. We also note that the new one, High Septon, who is the High Sparrow, by the way, well, he was born with dirt under his fingernails, very like Maribald, who we were just told has dirt under his fingernails. And it's very likely that the High Sparrow has slept under a few hedges too. The old ones are the best, I've heard. I also have to mention that for some reason, the High Septon carries around a weirwood staff topped with a crystal orb. That's an ice moon symbol on top of the cosmic axis tree, of course, but on a more basic level, it's simply an Odin-like weirwood staff for the old ones' septons to carry as they die in their sleep under hedges and trees. So, guys, that will do it for the scripted portion of today. There is a lot more to come, but obviously we can't keep going. So
5 more hours. No.
It's a marathon.
No, I would say the next one will probably be about the same length as this, maybe a little shorter depending on how much discussion we do. We did a lot of discussion today. Yeah. Which I planned on doing. That was fun. Silas, you're a great guest, and I didn't want to have you here just to twiddle your thumbs and stuff. So
no, thanks. That was fun. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
So let's thoughts on the general the concept on these tasty old ones, double entendres. They're pretty good, huh?
It is. Yeah. You've sussed out a lot of hidden and not so hidden symbolism that relates to all these myths and the Lovecraftian stories. So it's fun to see you work. And like, so the one thing, like when I really encountered Lovecraft initially in the Reddit subforums, they're always talking about him as like an homage to Lovecraft, all this stuff, right? And it's just a homage to Lovecraft, And I think it's so much more than that, like, you know, and you're sussing it out, because if the Bloodstone Emperor called down, you know, the shining trapezohedron and created the Lion of Night, which might be Nyarlathotep, that's pretty dang Lovecraftian, and it directly relates to the story. It's not just some background noise, which is fun if you like to look into it. It's very directly related. So it's big, and I'm glad we're discussing this.
Yeah, George does a good job of giving you multiple ways to enjoy the book. Like if you just read the series once and you just read the surface plot, there is plenty there to be entertained with and enjoy. And that's mostly what the TV show is adapting. And that's great. But it's also cool that if you want to, you can go deeper. And although you could say, well, you don't need to know all this to enjoy and get like the main thing of the story or the main themes of the story. And that's true. But George put a lot of work in his books, and a lot of the work went into this kind of stuff. And for me, like if you're into appreciating A Song of Ice and Fire, then this is great stuff to get into.
Definitely.
For sure.
Sanrixian, thoughts on the essay, and let us gaze at your artwork. But what do you think of the old ones?
I really like it. I'm not as educated as Quinn or Silas on the old ones, but I do have just a vast osmosis knowledge from the internet of them and just pop culture and stuff. And I think you're definitely onto something, and it was really cool to see it all come together.
Yeah.
While I paint my creepy city.
which looks great.
amazing, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, so like as some people in the audience might know, me and LML have talked about some of this stuff before. We've some of it, but this is like the first time I've seen like the whole scope of it. But it's still not even the whole scope.
Yeah.
A whole nother episode.
Yeah, and if you want to sort of see what's coming, I mean, just word search old ones in all the books, look at all those quotes in context and do your own analysis of them, and you'll pretty much know where I'm going. So I've done is I went through all the quotes with old ones once I figured out that this was a thing that was happening. And I pulled them all and I grouped them by subject and said, you know, these quotes are talking about the others. These quotes are talking about Azor Ahai. These quotes are talking about, you know, whatever. And so, you know, the ones that more directly relate to Garth. And then so I grouped them that way. And there's also a group that talks about women who are old ones, which is going to lead us back to Nissa as a cat woman and tiger woman and stuff like that. So that talk will be coming in the second half of this one too.
Mm-hmm.
But essentially what we did today is we did the ones that relate to Garth directly. Like all the stuff we did, you know, the old one is Garth. We're talking about Maribald, who has all this Weirwood and Garth symbolism. So that's essentially what we just did is we gave the the first half of today was, or the first 2/3 really, was like the conventional version of the theory. That's the theory that most people would make with these connections. And then once we started going into the wordplay, now we're going off into sort of the mythical astronomy, symbolism and wordplay angle. But I thought it would be cool to give you like the nuts and bolts of the theory without doing any of the symbolism and wordplay for the first part of it, just so you can see that it functions on its own. Just by diving into Lovecraft and Cernunno's stuff, you can sort of put these things together. But then when you start reading the old ones double entendre quotes and seeing all the context around them, then it sort of jumps into overdrive. So basically the next one will be all, you know, more old ones quotes, but it's going to give us some clues about the others that are very exciting, that will be basically new information that you have not heard before. So can look forward to that. We'll just have to schedule it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So Quinn, what do you think? Green Men? Are we going to see them? Are they?
Well,
is this all like? Is George teasing us, or you think we're going to see it?
Well, I think the green men have to show up at least. Yeah, and I'm down with the deep ones too, but I just don't know. Like I hope so. But the green men, I'm pretty sure they're probably going to show up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we'll see if he can really do that trick of weaving in some whole other race right at the end there.
I have so many crazy ideas about the deep ones that it's like,
yeah. We'll definitely see those green men.
Yeah.
The way that I would expect it to go is like, you know, with the Great Empire of the Dawn stuff, you know, some people were like, dude, why is George isn't going to give us this important information in the back pages of the World Book after 5 books in the series and we've never heard of him? That's crazy. But then I was just like, well, look, dude, he's been telling us about Dragon Lords from Ashai since book 1. And all the Great Empire of the Dawn is the name for those Dragon Lords. And then once you look at it that way, you're like, oh, okay, he actually set the ground for this. Mm-hmm. So we've been hearing about the Green Men on the Isle of Faces since the first book. And the most talk of them is in the first 3 books. So essentially, we've already heard that they have antlers. That's the thing. Like, my big radical theory here today is basically just that the legend is right, and that there actually are horned men with antlers on the Isle of Faces, just like Bran says the legends say. So it's like, it's revolutionary, but it's also like actually just what they tell you. So yeah, it should be fun.
And now we don't have the time today, but the next question, I'm sure you'll get to it, is why? Why the hell are they on the island? What are they doing there?
Well, I guess they're guarding the weirwood trees, supposedly. But I wonder what else, like, why are there all those weirwood trees on the island? Like, I'm thinking there might be a black stone in the middle of that weirwood grove. What do you think, Silas?
I think it's either there or at the High Towers Tower. That's the two with Battle Isle. You know, it's either at Isle of Faces or Battle Isle. Like, one of those two spots. So I completely agree with you. Yeah.
That's the vibe I get. So there could be a talisman there of great power and destruction capability. Either the others or Euron could be trying to get, you know, if it's in the High Tower, then you could say that Euron's probably trying to get it. And if it's on the Isle of Faces, it's more open. Could be the others, could be Euron.
Mm-hmm. Could be the deep ones coming up and taking over Harrenhal.
Maybe Bran has to use it. You know, maybe the Green Men will be like, "Yes, the chosen one.
Yeah.
Here's your black meteor. Do your dark work.
Take your meteor, boy."
All right.
What do you think, Quinn? What do you think is on? Do you think they're guarding something other than Weirwood's there?
I don't know. Maybe they're tasked with something else. Maybe they're just like watching for something or waiting for some moment. I don't know. I get the sense that a lot of the magical stuff in George R. Martin's world is kind of like waiting for something. They're kind of like the others seem to be waiting for something to happen. Like if the Church of the Starry Wisdom is a thing, and if they're moving, they seem to be like, seems like they were waiting for a specific point to like really become active and start like moving the pieces. So it seems like everybody's just waiting for an important moment in time or an event before they like get together and like start moving and like starting to get everything. I feel like it's happening now. So whatever they're doing, it's probably already started.
Yeah, and again, that gets us right back to the whole Lovecraft idea of sleeping gods. So, yeah. And one thing that we've been talking about is this idea of partitioning the Weirwood net or even shutting down the Weirwood net. And one thing I was talking with, I think it was Colin beforehand, about this idea of Jar-Har, the Sea Green Emperor, you know, Reed, Greenseer Emperor, he sealed off the tombs of Ling and forbid anyone to go down there. And we've, based on the Bran's Cauldron idea, have wondered if the Weirwood net is like a Bran's Cauldron, that someone's got to go inside it and shut it down from the inside and sacrifice their life in doing so. And so you think about Jar-Har sealing off the caves of the old ones. You just wonder if maybe that's what Bran's going to end up doing.
Destroying the Weirwood net.
Or at least closing it off to human Greenseers is maybe a better way to put it. Because I think that's what Azor Ahai did by killing Nissa Nissa and quote unquote invading the Weirwood net, is he carved a face into it. He took out his knife, he injured the Weirwood trees, he made them so that humans could inhabit them. And in doing so, I think he essentially hollowed out the Weirwood consciousness. And that tree consciousness may be what the others are, that sort of pushed out tree consciousness. And that to me would explain the idea that the others are pissed off and they're coming for vengeance. And that's why they're icy she, essentially, Quinn, is because they are like elves or forest spirits, except for they're icy.
An icy manifestation of like literal nature, literal nature consciousness just manifested as living ice.
Yeah, that's where I think it's going. And we're going to see some clues about that in the second half of this one, actually. So there's a lot of good old ones clues at the wall, and that's where we're going to see some shit go down. So the image behind me, whoa, it's Tiger, and thank you for the kind words. I saw that. I got it from, should I tell you where I get all my banners from? It was really cheap. There's lots of cheap banners that you can get in the world. They're just called like wall hangings. It's usually the word to search for. So there's lots of them, but this is just a good one that I found because, you know, it's a forest. All right, guys. So thank you very much, everybody. We are at 3 hours here and change. So thanks, Silas Toms. It's been tons of fun having you on. I have a feeling we'll have you on again in the future.
Can't wait.
And obviously, I'd like to get both you guys back for part 2, assuming the scheduling works out. So
yes,
we'll have to talk about that.
Yep.
Yeah. Because you're having a big Super Bowl party that I am now crashing.
You're totally invited. Just got to make your way over the bay. Yeah.
Yeah, it's easy. It's only like 45 minutes.
Yeah. I usually put a TV on the roof, TV in the bathroom, TVs everywhere. Can't miss anything, right?
Roof TV.
Yeah, at this point, man, I'm just rooting for the friggin' Patriots. I've just given up on hating them. Like they might as well fucking win it again. I mean, why not? You can't. I mean, what can you say? The guys, they just keep doing it. But let's not tank the stream totally with football talk. Thank you, everybody. We won't, like I said, we won't be doing it at the same time next Sunday. Make sure you tune in for the announcement. You know, get on Twitter at the Dragon LML. If you're on Patreon, you'll see the announcement there. If you're on Facebook, I'll put the announcement on Facebook. So there you go. And of course, all you have to do is subscribe to this channel and make sure you click on the notification bell. And that way you'll actually get a notification to your phone or computer when we go live. So thank you very much to everyone who sent in super chats. Thanks to all the patrons. Thanks to all the good comments. Thanks to Silas and Quinn. And real quick, Sanrixian, Silas, and Quinn, I want all three of you to give us the place where we can find your stuff. And Sanri, we'll go ahead and start with you.
I'm Sanrixian. You can find me at sanrixian.com. I've got about 5 calendars left, and that's it. If you want one, go get one now. And Twitter at Sanrixian. That's where you'll find me the most. So find me there.
Short and sweet. Silas?
Yeah, so my Twitter handle is Loki_president. I'm on there quite a bit. And then all my essays are on godsofterror.tumblr.com. You can just Google Gods of Terror as well. But yeah, I'm there. I lurk on Reddit. But find me on Twitter and let's talk. And I just had a fun thread, which I was really glad that you participated in on Friday, about some Viking zombie stuff. So help me formulate these things, because it's a lot.
Well, like I was telling you, you've been sort of circling around the outskirts of the myth heads, so you might as well just come on in and embrace us, and we'll help you figure it out. That Draugr stuff is pretty cool. We're into it.
Awesome.
So,
awesome.
Yeah, and Quinn, I think we all know the ideas of Ice and Fire YouTube channel, but tell us what you're working on.
Yeah, okay. So the next video, the video that's going up this week, or at least the next one, is my Song of Ice and Fire video. That the working title is The Witches or Witchcraft, and I'm like focusing on Tiana of the Tower, Tiana the Black from Fire and Blood, and also Alice Westhill, and then some other witches like the Ghost of High Heart and Melisandre, and I'm doing some stuff with that. So that's coming up.
Cool.
It's gonna be like a 15-minute. So yeah. So yeah, and check me out on Twitter and Facebook, Ideas of Ice and Fire. You can just Google me or something.
And of course, if you didn't know, Quinn does awesome videos on Dune. So if you're interested in Dune, if you've seen the movie and heard that there are books, you should watch these videos and then let Quinn, tempt you to read the books and get into all of it, because it's pretty fucking awesome shit.
Yeah,
so.
Or if you just want to know what Dune is all about, just watch my Ultimate Guide to Dune Part 1. It's 30 minutes long. Just type it in, you'll find it, and yeah, you'll get it.
Really great work. Yeah, it is good stuff. You put a lot of work into that, man. They came out great. I shudder to think the rendering times, but
I've gotten better with this new computer that I got. So
yeah. Okay, guys. Thanks, everyone, and I will see you next week at some time yet to be announced. And thank you all.
Bye.
Bye.
yeah.